Audiobook by Fate's Reader. Don't forget to subscribe and like the channel for more epic series. Drop your recommended novel below. We love to know what you want to hear next. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 211. Gate of Heaven Influence. Qin Mu taught Hu Linger how to control the mechanism. He had left a control station at the chest of Undulating Devil King, and by pushing a secret compartment gently, the control station would automatically pop out. The god statue mechanism that was made of winter crystal iron was extremely huge, a towering 9 yards tall, and Qin Mu had spent a great deal of money for it. Just the winter crystal iron alone had cost him 10,000 great abundance coins. The parts of the god statue mechanism also numbered in thousands. There were 800 to 900 of the gears alone, making the mechanism incredibly complicated. Even if Undulating Devil King wasn't willing to move, they could control him using the control station. The god statue mechanism had 8 arms and 4 faces, which looked very fierce, and it was extremely strong. Ordinary divine arts practitioners would find it hard to penetrate through the defense of winter crystal iron. At the heart of the god statue mechanism, there was a tiny pill furnace which was pretty similar to the one Qin Mu had forged for Fan Yunxiao. However, he had made the pill furnace on Fan Yunxiao's ruined ship for the first time, so he lacked experience. This time, the pill furnace was much smaller and more intricate than before. When Hu Linger sat down in the control station, she could send medicinal stones into the tiny pill furnace and use her vital qi to control the fire there. Even without Undulating Devil King, she could use this god statue mechanism as a heavy armored weapon. If Undulating Devil King treated the god statue mechanism as his body to help out in battle, the power he would be able to unleash would be no small matter. Divine arts practitioners of Six Directions realm would no longer be his match, and even divine arts practitioners of Seven Stars realm couldn't say they would be able to win against him for certain. Qin Mu learned how to create this god statue mechanism from Mute, Deaf, and Old Ma. He had merely put together what the 3 of them had taught him, not creating anything new. The only creating he did was to put all of it together. However, this god statue mechanism was definitely at the level of smithing masters, mechanical masters, and rune masters. He had created a totally different type of battle method. Hu Linger was full of excitement and ignored Undulating Devil King, who was in the god statue mechanism's body. She immediately sat down into the small control station to control this god statue mechanism for a trial run. Qin Mu immediately said, "Big dragon, follow her. Don't let her cause any trouble." The dragon Qilin acknowledged his command and caught up to Hu Linger, who was squealing and flailing the arms of the god statue. Qin Mu looked at the back figure of the dragon Qilin and saw its tummy nearly touching the floor. It's time for this fellow to go on a diet. Qin Mu shook his head. This dragon Qilin hadn't been very robust in the past, yet even though he frequently starved, he looked majestic and no one dared to come close to him when he was guarding the mountain. But ever since it had followed him, he never missed a scarlet fire spirit pill and drank the water of Jade Dragon River to his content. This resulted in him becoming fatter and fatter, growing in size by quite a lot. If this continued, the dragon Qilin would soon become a huge meatball with only its belly reaching the floor. Could forget about putting his claws on the floor anymore. In the past, Patriarch definitely didn't give him 1 bucket of scarlet fire spirit pills, or else this fellow would have already become as fat as a ball. He's lying about his rations. I think it's better to just give him half a bucket. Qin Mu held his breath with rapt attention and executed Overlord Body once again. He transformed into the form of Saturn Sovereign, which had a human head but the body of a snake. The apparition of the scroll took form in his hand, and a gate gradually appeared behind him. Qin Mu turned around, and his soul trembled, giving off strange sounds. It was the language of Yudu that Undulating Devil King had taught him. The Devil King had called that Gate of Earth Origin, but even if he didn't know if it really meant Gate of Earth Origin, he had not learned the sentence incorrectly. He spoke out the words on the gate, and the Gate of Earth Origin gradually opened up and revealed a space of endless darkness. Qin Mu was stunned for a moment. He walked around this gate and saw he was still in his own courtyard. The gate was thin beyond belief and seemed to have no thickness. From his current angle, he could only see a thin sheet of darkness erected vertically over there. Yet when he stood in front of the gate, he could see endless darkness in front of himself. This is a gate that connects to the other world? Qin Mu was stunned. He stretched out his palm and carefully put it inside the door, but there was nothing abnormal. Is this the marvel of Five Elements realm? Does other people's Five Elements realm have this gate? Did anyone open and enter it before? He was a little hesitant. What would he meet after entering this gate? Would the legendary Yudu be in this darkness? Could he still live to come back after going in? Right at this moment, Qin Mu saw a light coming from the world of darkness. It was a human and a boat. On the bow of the boat hung a dim lamp, giving off a ghostly light. The little boat was floating over to him. Under the light of the lamp on the bow of the boat, there was an elder folding paper humans and paper horses. With the flickering light, the scene looked extremely tranquil. Qin Mu tried to pop his head into the gate only to see the elder taking down the lamp and shining it at him. When Qin Mu was shone upon by the light, he felt his soul being fixed in place and was unable to move. The elder on the boat hung the lamp back on the bow of the boat. When the light was no longer on Qin Mu's body, he let out a sigh of relief. Suddenly, his hair stood up on end as he lowered his head to take a look and saw himself standing on the boat, right beside the elder. The little boat was turning around unhurriedly, and Qin Mu turned his head back to have a look. He could see light coming from a gate that was far away, and in front of it he was standing and looking in. His body in front of the gate seemed to be frozen, unable to move at all. If he was still at the gate, then who was he here? He looked around, but his surroundings were just darkness. The only light came from the lamp, and that light formed the gate of Earth origin. His heart turned icy cold. The elder who was folding paper humans and paper horses on the boat had shone this lamp on him and spirited away his soul onto the ship. The him in front of the gate was already a body without a soul. Why did you take away my soul when I have yet to die? Qin Mu asked the elder. The elder ignored him and continued to focus on folding the paper humans and paper horses. Qin Mu turned his head back and saw that the gate of Earth origin was getting farther and farther away. It greatly terrified him. Dutian Devil King had indeed hidden some things from him. This gate was probably not the gate of Earth origin. Otherwise, this elder wouldn't have snatched his soul. He jumped off the ship. He was still not too far from the gate and might be able to make it back to his body. However, the moment he jumped out, he didn't fall into the water as he had expected. Surrounding the boat was darkness, boundless darkness. He was like a drowning person, flailing his arms everywhere, but there was no place for him to exert force on. He could only see himself continuing to sink, falling into the deeper and blacker darkness. He looked upwards, and the little boat in the darkness went farther and farther away from him. The light at the bow of the ship was also becoming smaller and dimmer. Gradually, the light was too tiny to be seen. Dutian Devil King, that bastard, he really tricked me. Qin Mu felt as if he had fallen into a nightmare of endless darkness. He had no way to break free, no way to struggle and save himself. This was a darkness that made people lose all hope and sink into despair. Meanwhile, the boat which could carry his soul had already sailed far away. Suddenly, Qin Mu exerted all his strength to shout with his soul, shouting the language of Yudu that Dutian Devil King had taught him. The cryptic pitch was suave, craggy, and impossible to pronounce, but that was because it could only be shouted out by the soul. When he finished saying this sentence, a similarly cryptic and ancient voice came from the boundless darkness. This voice was also saying the words of Yudu, but it sounded like chanting. The voice seemed like it was a forebear from the ancient times, offering lives and fresh blood as sacrifice to a dignified god that bore the weight of the world. Qin Mu immediately felt his body floating upwards, and the speed at which he was moving became faster and faster, until he turned into a flash of light at the end. The shooting light whistled and flew out of the darkness, rushing into Qin Mu's body that was standing at the gate. The body trembled violently as Qin Mu gasped for breath. He was all covered in sweat as though he had just crawled out of the water. Meanwhile, behind the gate, the boat floated over once more without any hurry. The elder on the boat looked at him, but he didn't shine his lamp at him this time. Qin Mu stood in front of that gate, ready to disperse his Saturn sovereign's form any time to let the gate disappear when he asked, "Tao brother, what's the meaning of your sentence?" That elder's gaze landed on his body, and the little boat turned its direction to sail towards the darkness. Earth is the great origin. All things owe to it their birth, receiving obediently the influence of heaven. Earth, in its largeness, supports and contains all things. Its excellent capacity matches the unlimited power. Its comprehension is wide, and its brightness is great. The various things in it obtain their full development. The mare is a creature of earthly kind. Its power of moving on the earth is without limit. It is mild and docile, advantageous and firm. Such is the course of the superior man. If he takes the initiative, he goes astray and misses his proper course. If he follows, he is docile and gets into his regular course. The sentence that you said was none other than Earth is the great origin. If you had said it earlier, I wouldn't have taken your soul. That boat sailed farther and farther away before gradually disappearing. The elder's voice traveled over a great distance, growing faint. This gate is Yudu's gate of heaven influence, its earth origin heaven influence. Ghosts can enter, but it's not a place you can enter. Dutian Devil King had really wanted to harm me. Qin Mu was furious, but then he burst out laughing. Luckily my life was not lost, so I can just slowly deal with him. My soul seems to have changed a little. He felt that his soul had become much stronger after the journey to Yudu. Qin Mu was stunned. When he executed Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique, he felt an indescribable power coming from the gate of heaven influence, which was nourishing his soul. He couldn't help being stunned. Even though Dutian Devil King had lied to him, not all his words were untruths. Dutian Devil King had been right. Knowing the words on this gate and opening the gate could indeed allow his cultivation to have no shortcomings, so he could be even greater than Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor in this realm. Saturn Sovereign's form of his 5 elements realm was of utmost importance to him, since it was crucial for his soul cultivation. After quite some time, Qin Mu felt his soul become more and more stable. When he looked at the scroll in his hand, the words there became clearer, showing him weird letters that had the shapes of birds, beasts, fish, sun, and moon. Even though he didn't recognize them, his gaze swept past them as though he knew what they meant. The marvel of the words on the scroll then automatically became part of his knowledge. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 212. Parting is inevitable. There weren't many words on the scroll, and Qin Mu gave the writing a quick once-over. Instantly, various types of cultivation logic regarding the soul appeared in his mind. Dutian Devil King had told him that there were spells of Yudu on the scroll, but it showed up that was just another lie to entice him. At least there is still 1 sentence out of 10 I say that is true. Since in Dutian Devil King's speech, only 1 sentence among 100 of them is true, Qin Mu thought to himself. Out of all the things he said to me, only the language of Yudu was true. Everything else was a lie. He analyzed the scroll in detail. If he comprehended the entire marvel of the writings there, he could indeed comprehend some spells regarding souls. However, the most important use of this scroll was to strengthen the soul, while the soul spell was only secondary. Qin Mu memorized the writings on the scroll and closed it to meditate. He tried to figure out the marvel of the writings, trying to comprehend a kind of soul spell. Great educational heavenly devil scriptures had spells related to soul, and Barbarian D Empire also had these kinds of spells. The Thunderclap 8 strikes that Old Ma had taught him, as well as the Great Freedom Madra of the Devil Race, were also spells that were targeted at souls. Soul Guide of 9 Spectre Sect was an even more outstanding divine art. If he could compare the runes of the words, he could increase his power. Qin Mu thought for a long time before slowly walking into his courtyard. With every action and step, he incorporated the words of Yudu into the move Sunshine, refining Yang Soul in the sky. This was one of the moves of Thunderclap 8 strikes, the greatest battle technique in Rulai's Mahayana Sutra. Its power was strong and fierce since it had been improved by the previous generations of Rulai to its extreme, to the point it couldn't be improved anymore. Yet now Qin Mu was improving this move. He had never cultivated Rulai's Mahayana Sutra, But ever since great educational heavenly devil scriptures had fused with Overlord Body 3 elixir technique and unified all skills, the power of Thunderclap 8 strikes had become stronger and stronger, being no weaker than of those who cultivated Rulai's Mahayana Sutra. He practiced move after move, one punch after another, with the fist as Heart Mudra and the Heart Mudra as the sun. Every punch gave off the sound of rolling thunder and the intensity of the blazing sun. As the Yang soul was refined, the power was gradually raised. The move sunshine refining Yang soul in the sky had not much use against the corporeal body. Even if it looked powerful, it was only targeted at the soul. Qin Mu practiced this move over and over again, and a trace of fire was gradually forced out from the fist mudra. This flame was different from ordinary flames. It was the karma fire that burns the soul. Every punch of his brought along karma fire, and gradually, the karma fire became more and more intense, turning the surroundings of the fist into a blazing scarlet-red sun. The more he punched, the more he used to it he got, which left him unable to resist howling endlessly. Suddenly, a huge sun exploded out in the sky, and flames surged forth in all directions, covering the entire courtyard in karma fire. Qin Mu retracted his stance back and let out a shallow breath. Suddenly, his heart wavered and he opened his door to see Sword Hall Master walking over with quick steps. Qin Mu invited him in and asked, "Sword Hall? What's the rush?" "Heavenly King Lu is injured," Sword Hall said in a low voice, his expression solemn. "He's at my place now and wants to meet Cult Master. His condition is very bad." Qin Mu's heart leaped out, and he hurried out of his courtyard with Sword Hall. "Cult Master, I'm embarrassed to meet you with these injuries since I can't greet you due to their severity," Heavenly King Lu said with embarrassment as he lay on the bed and struggled to get up yet was unable to. Qin Mu shook his head and went forward to check on his injuries, frowning slightly. The man's clothes were tattered, and there were even bloodstains on his white hair and beard. Heavenly King Lu's injuries were even worse than those of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. He must have been injured by fighting with a few strong practitioners of the cult master level. His injuries were not only on the physical body, but even his divine treasures were injured. The damage to his soul was also extremely serious. All of his 7 great divine treasures had suffered devastating blows. His spirit embryo was petrified, 3 of his 5 element gods were destroyed, only 2 pillars of his 6 directions divine treasure were left, while his 7 stars divine treasure, celestial being divine treasure, life and death realm were crushed in their entirety. The only flying bridge in his divine bridge re. It would have been fine if it was only these injuries, but the crucial point was that he was already old and his body was no longer like it was in the past. It was difficult for his physical body to hold together his soul, which was about to crumble. Heavenly King Lu took in a deep breath and said, "Cult Master, I've located Heavenly King Qian's whereabouts. Stop talking first." Qin Mu took out 2 bottles of dragon's saliva to heal the injuries on his body. He then let him drink another bottle and muttered to himself irresolutely while writing down the names of herbs, telling Sword Hall Master to grab them from the warehouse. As for whether those herbs could heal Heavenly King Lu, he had no certainty. The best result would be him surviving but becoming useless, while the worst result, Sword Hall Master left in a hurry. The injuries on Heavenly King Lu's body got better, but those on his soul and divine treasures became even more serious as he panted. "Heavenly King Qian has already died. I followed his trail, but someone used his clothes to bring me on a wild goose chase that led into an ambush." Qin Mu frowned. "Who ambushed you?" "They didn't reveal their faces, but I recognized their divine arts." Heavenly King Lu's body contorted. This was due to the injuries bursting forth in his soul and causing him pain. Heavenly King Lu gritted his teeth and endured it. His white hair shook along with his body as he chuckled. "They did it for the art of teleportation of our sacred cult. Cult Master, I can't assist you anymore. I'm ashamed for failing Patriarch's instructions. Don't worry, you won't die or become disabled." The corners of Qin Mu's eyes twitched as he said in a low voice, "Even if you die, I'll drag your soul back from Yudu. One of the people that injured me was a first-ranking high official of the imperial court. Heavenly King Lu regained his composure. I recognized his technique, which was Spirit Treasure Unmovable Meditation Technique. Among the first-ranking high officials, Sun Nantua, the Grand Preceptor of the Crown Prince, has refined this technique to its extreme. Sitting on his 1,000-banner pagoda, his spirit treasure is unmovable. Qin Mu made swift moves, his hands dotting on Heavenly King Lu's body. His 10 fingers moved up and down, leaving afterimages. In an instant, he sealed Heavenly King Lu's soul in his body, preventing it from leaving. He used Heavenly Devil Creation Technique, which was used by the higher-ups in Heavenly Devil Cult to strip the skin and make clothing. However, in his hand, it was a life-saving method. Heavenly King Lu's 3 souls and 7 spirits were sealed, but it was still difficult for Qin Mu to stop the momentum of his soul dispersing. Cult Master, even though you're a divine physician, you won't be able to save a person that's going to die. Heavenly King Lu revealed a smile and got down from the bed with his trembling body. Once he sat down on the ground, a rosy color appeared on his face as he smiled. There's no need for you to waste your energy. My soul is going to disperse soon and my divine bridge is broken anyway. I can't endure it anymore. I thought I could assist Cult Master to help our sacred cult prosper after Patriarch had left, but never would I have thought that I wouldn't be able to see that day. Crumbling sounds came from his body. It was his divine bridge, divine treasure, starting to crumble when its support was lost. The crumbling divine bridge, divine treasure, crushed the life and death divine treasure, which crushed the celestial being divine treasure. The divine treasures crumbled one after another. Sorrow filled Qin Mu's heart. Now even the Herb's Sword Hall Master retrieved wouldn't be able to save him. Blazing flames burst out of Heavenly King Lu's body. His soul was shredded, and this kind of shred was irreversible. His injuries were too serious, especially those on his soul. It was on the verge of dispersing. If his soul dispersed, he wouldn't be able to enter Yudu. He couldn't even become a ghost then. The blazing sacred fire. Incinerate my broken body. Heavenly King Lu muttered in the blazing fire. Life and death are impermanent, and partings are inevitable. I won't be able to see you become the sacred teacher. How I wish to return to Saint Arrival Mountain to see the sacred teacher tree. I can almost hear the woodcutter cutting into its wood. That elder shuddered in the fire, then revealed a smiled. Cult Master, I'm very cold. Qin Mu stretched his palm out, wanting to grab the elder's hand, but all he grabbed was ashes. The blazing fire dissipated, and all it left behind were gray-white ashes. The sound of Sword Hall Master's footsteps came from outside, and he rushed in while carrying big and small packages of herbs. Qin Mu turned around and said with a stupefied expression, Sword Hall, there's no need for them anymore. Heavenly King Lu has already gone to heaven. The packages of herbs dropped to the ground from Sword Hall Master's hands. This 9 feet burly man knelt down on the ground and bowed deeply. His shoulders trembled continuously, but no cries came out. After some time, Qin Mu swept Heavenly King Lu's ashes up and placed them into a green jar, then stood in a daze in front of it. He had been pushed into his current position out of nowhere, sold by Granny C to Heavenly Devil Cult, and still muddle-headed became the cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult. He didn't have much sentiments with Heavenly Devil Cult, only with Granny C and the young Patriarch. However, as he learned more and more about Heavenly Devil Cult, he gradually fell in love with the cult's doctrine and the interesting people in the cult. He admired their conduct and way of handling things. He already treated himself as one of the members of Heavenly Devil Cult, trying his best to become a qualified sacred cult master. Qin Mu hadn't spent much time with Heavenly Devil Lu. The other had treated him less like the sacred cult master and more like a mischievous disciple, cleaning up the mess he had left behind in Saint Arrival Mountain. The old man was like an elder who doted on the younger generation, having eyes full of admiration. And now he had died, become a pile of ashes in the green jar. Sword Hall. A trace of sharpness appeared in Qin Mu's blank gaze, and he said slowly, Order the disciples to gather all the resources and investigate. I want all the information available on Sun Nantua, the Grand Preceptor of the Crown Prince. His entire life, his family, his sect, his disciples, everything about him. Sword Hall Master rose. As Cult Master's commands. Qin Mu continued, bring Heavenly King Lu back as well. He wants to return to the side of the sacred teacher tree. You shall bury him there. Sword Hall Master brought the green jar away. Qin Mu walked out of Sword Hall's residence and found Si Yunxiang, who had returned from the floor of Heavenly Record to take back his book tablet. He then headed to the floor of Heavenly Record. There, he came to the third level where there were not many classics. There were only 100 scrolls in this place, and many white-haired secretaries were researching all kinds of techniques to push out old ideas and bring in new ones. Qin Mu found Spirit Treasure Unmovable Meditation Technique and studied it carefully. He didn't sleep or rest, but studied for 2 days straight. He then walked out of floor of Heavenly Records, returning to his residence to sleep. The next day, Sword Hall Master brought a thick dossier over. Qin Mu read through it while paying attention to every detail, spending half a day to look through everything gathered on Sun Nantua. He then closed his eyes. Sword Hall Master had waited beside him quietly through it all, and after some time, Qin Mu opened his eyes and said, Nantua Monastery, Sun Nantua, Spirit Treasure Unmovable Meditation Technique. The impact would be too huge if we eliminated his whole family in the capital city, so we'll do it outside. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 213, Seeking Revenge. Sword Hall, inform the 12 cult protector elders and the 8 supervisors of our sacred cult to wait beside Mud River outside the capital city. Qin Mu closed up the dossier and handed what he learned from Spirit Treasure Unmovable Meditation Technique to Sword Hall Master. I had researched Spirit Treasure Unmovable Meditation Technique to find its weakness and recorded it down here. Let them have a look. All of the Hall Masters shall stay put for now and wait for my arrangements. Sword Hall received his command and rose to leave. Qin Mu called Hu Linger and the Dragon Qilin over and instructed them to stay in Imperial College for the next few days. He then went to the end of the alley in Scholar's residence and found Wei Yong. Brother Wei, is Duke Wei back? Wei Yong said, he just returned a few days ago from quelling the rebellion. Can I trouble Brother Wei to go home and tell Duke Wei that there's going to be something fun to see at Nantua Monastery? Wei Yong was puzzled, but he still smiled. Even though my old father likes to join in on the fun, he doesn't join just any fun. If the situation isn't large enough, he will definitely not go. After all, his chatter reaches the ears of everyone in the capital. What exactly is it? Qin Mu said, just tell him. You will know once you get there. Bewildered, Wei Yong went down the mountain with him. They parted ways later, and Qin Mu came to Rain Listening Pavilion in Flower Alley. Fu Qingyun welcomed him in a hurry and said, Cult Master. Qin Mu raised his hand and signaled for her not to say any more. Suddenly, cracking sounds exploded from his body as his bones shifted their locations. He became taller and taller, turning into a tall yet lean man. He looked like a barbarian from beyond the Great Wall. Fu Qingyun jumped in shock. Creation technique? I wonder which writing is it from among the 7 writings. A faint golden glow radiated off Qin Mu's body. He changed into a robe that was rougher made and took out the 1,000 Banners Pagoda from his Taotai sack. He lifted the 1,000 Banners Pagoda, which was about 3 yards tall, and it spun continuously, giving off clanking sounds. A Buddha voice could be faintly heard coming out from inside it. Hall Master Fu, stay here and don't make a move. Wait for my instructions. Qin Mu dragged out the 1,000 Banners Pagoda after himself as he left Rain Listening Pavilion. He walked out of Flower Alley and headed towards Nantua Side Palace. This place was the Crown Prince's Grand Preceptor's manor. Nantua Monastery was one of the sects which were only inferior to Great Thunderclap Monastery in the Buddhism path. After Sun Nantua acknowledged allegiance to the imperial court, Nantua Monastery had become one of the big sects under the imperial court. Sun Nantua had deep attainment in Buddhist skills and was an upright person. He hated evil with a passion and was known as an arhat. Once he became the Grand Preceptor of the Crown Prince and had Nantua Monastery submit to the imperial court, the other monasteries on the path of Buddhism also had to submit. Due to this, his contributions couldn't be denied. After Sun Nantua had changed the name of Crown Prince's Grand Preceptor's Manor to Nantua Side Palace. This place became the main preaching grounds of Nantua Monastery. There were many young monks from Nantua Monastery that came here listen to lectures. There were also some women from the kings, dukes, and ministers' families that had the hearts that worshipped Buddhism. They would come to listen to lectures from time to time. However, these women were usually painstakingly lonely, and some of them came with impure intentions, hooking up with the young monks in the name of worshipping the Buddha to relieve their loneliness. There were even aging women who would raise a few young monks, which resulted in those monks entering and leaving their chambers. This was something that was a common occurrence in the capital. Some old monks even kept a few young women working hard round the clock to make music, causing quite a controversy. Even though Sun Nantua knew his subordinates were a little dirty, he was too busy with official work and duties and had no time to discipline them. In addition to that, the social customs in the capital were much more open and the women here were more daring. Even the Empress Dowager in the palace had a lover, so Sun Nantua had no interest to get involved with his folk. The emperor had bestowed marriage to Sun Nantua repeatedly, which he had rejected 3 times in a row. However, he accepted it on the 4th, so he was considered half a monk and half a secular person. Therefore, it wasn't good for him to condemn his disciples' common practice. Nantua Side Palace always had repulsive stuff happening, and Sun Nantua always turned a blind eye to it. However, he still hated evil with a passion and didn't bother to hide his displeasure towards the officials coming from the devil path, scolding them in the imperial court. On this day, a commotion rose up outside of Nantua Monastery. The monks there ran out one after another, and there were also quite a number of disciples that had ran out as well while shouting, "There's someone outside selling an important treasure of Buddhism, 1,000 Banners Pagoda, a complimentary treasure to our Nantua Monastery's spirit treasure unmovable meditation technique. It's our legacy treasure that was lost a few hundred years ago." Everyone came out of the side palace and indeed saw the lost legacy treasure of Nantua Monastery, 1,000 Banners Pagoda. Many monks crowded the area, blocking off the whole street. There were also some women squeezed among them. A pagoda towered among the crowd, and it was formed by 1,000 banners. Each and every one of them was sculpted out from jade and split into 7 levels. Each level had circular cylinders that were carved with scriptures. These cylinders could revolve, and when they turned, the scriptures on them would glow and give off Buddha voice. Inside each scripture banner, there were treasures like colored glaze, jade necklace, sarira, lamps, topaz, and agate. Thousands of banners piled up together to form a tower. This was the legacy treasure of Nantua Monastery, Pagoda of 1,000 Banners, which was also known as 1,000 Banners Pagoda. This treasure had been long lost in some scuffle, and never did the monks had expected it to resurface once again. Each and every one of them in Nantua Monastery was red with envy and didn't want anything more than to snatch the pagoda back. However, this was the capital city, so they couldn't make their move recklessly. The one selling this 1,000-banner pagoda was a young man that had an appearance of someone from a different race. He was standing under the pagoda, activating it. The 1,000 Banners Pagoda was originally not tall, each banner only 3 inches in height. However, when it was activated by this young man, each banner became 3 yards long, causing the 1,000 Banners Pagoda to reach an astonishing height of 200 yards. As the 1,000 cylinders rotated, scriptures continuously glowed while a powerful Buddha voice spoke, creating a magnificent sight. The barbarian's voice was resounding. "My humble self has an important treasure handed down in my family and will give it to a fated person. I'm from the prairie beyond the Great Wall, a shaman of Roland's Golden Palace. This treasure was handed down to me by my ancestor who had rescued an old monk and received it as a gift from him. Coming to Eternal Peace Empire this time, I would like to meet the heroes of this empire and find a fated person for this treasure. Senior Brother Yuan Jing, is this not the legacy treasure of our Nantua Monastery?" One monk whispered to another one beside him, who had delicate features. Even though Senior Brother Yuan Jing wasn't that old, he was still the direct disciple of Sun Nantua and had a high position. Cultivating with Sun Nantua for so many years, he was extremely familiar with the history of Nantua Monastery and nodded. This is indeed the legacy treasure of our Nantua Monastery, Thousand Banners Pagoda. The scriptures carved on it are the Arhat Nantua scriptures with the blessing of the leaders of the past generations. It can't be faked. Monk Yuanjing's gaze wavered, and he suddenly shouted out loudly, "You barbarian! This is the treasure of our Nantua Monastery. Quickly return it to us." Qin Mu took a look at him and said, "Monk, this treasure was given to my family by a senior monk, and since it was given to my family, it is mine. My treasure will only be given to a fated person." Suddenly, another young monk laughed. "How can one be considered to be fated?" Monk Yuanjing looked towards him and was astonished. This monk also had delicate features and was the other disciple of Sun Nantua, Monk Yuanfeng. The two of them had already had a dispute with each other by fighting over a woman and a few more times for other reasons in the dark. On the outside, they might look polite and amiable, but they had fallen out with each other long ago. It was obvious that Monk Yuanfeng had planned to get this Thousand Banners Pagoda from the hands of this barbarian and do a great deed in front of Sun Nantua, receiving Sun Nantua's attention and becoming the teacher's pet, squeezing him aside. Qin Mu placed down the Thousand Banners Pagoda and said solemnly, "My humble self is from beyond the Great Wall, and when I saw the magnificent state of the empire, admiration bloomed in my heart, and I was certain that this place derives its glory from its illustrious heroes. This Thousand Banners Pagoda is not an ordinary object, and my humble self is willing to use it to meet the heroes of this empire. If anyone that is on the same realm as me can defeat me, I'll be willing to hand him this treasure." Wei Yong and Duke Wei had walked out of Duke's Manor and come to Nantuaside Palace. Duke Wei took a look and shook his head with a smile. "What fun is there to see? Isn't it just a brat from Roland's Golden Palace seeking trouble with Nantua Monastery?" His voice was so loud that when he spoke, everyone in the next few streets could hear him clearly. The few streets were where all the kings, dukes, and ministers lived. When they heard Duke Wei's words, they all left all their manners and looked over, creating quite a commotion in a matter of seconds. The monks of Nantua Monastery saw more and more people appearing, so it wasn't good for them to just snatch the treasure. A yellow-clothed monk smiled. "As long as we defeat you, we can take away the Thousand Banners Pagoda?" Even though Duke Wei wasn't really excited, he still shouted out in a loud voice, "Baldy," he said on the same realm, "you can't break the rules. Where's Sun Nantua? His treasure has appeared, so which woman is he getting on now?" Wei Yong was bewildered and looked around, thinking to himself, "How did Brother Qin know there would be interesting things to see here? Where is he?" Qin Mu said, "As long as you win against my humble self, you can take away Thousand Banners Pagoda. Even though the world beyond the Great Wall isn't as flourishing as your empire, our words hold enormous weight." The yellow monk was about to go forward when Monk Yuanjing took a step before him and said with a smile, "I'll take the pagoda. Senior brother, this little monk is Yuanjing, Five Elements Realm. May I know who you are?" Qin Mu said solemnly, "Roland's Golden Palace, Pangong Tso, Five Elements Realm." Monk Yuanjing's vigor burst forth as he executed Spirit Treasure Unmovable Meditation Technique. Rays shone brightly from his body, and a huge apparition of a Buddha appeared faintly behind him. The huge Buddha had 1,000 arms holding 1,000 treasures. There were colored glazed cups, jade lanterns, a bow, an arrow, a metal truncheon, a pestle, and all kinds of other treasures. The huge Buddha suddenly merged with Monk Yuanjing and disappeared. Rays of treasure light shone off Monk Yuanjing's body, and his hand formed a treasure mudra. With a step forward, the mudra on his hand turned into colored glaze mudra. His hand shone with the gloss of a colored glaze, and he smacked towards Qin Mu. This was the strong point of Spirit Treasure Unmovable Meditation Technique. This Buddhist skill was known as Thousand Treasures, since those who cultivated this technique to the celestial being realm could form 1,000 treasures Buddha that had astonishing might. Those that had not yet cultivated to celestial being realm could transform the 1,000 treasures into 1,000 mudras, and each mudra was different from the rest, having different power and use. Even though Monk Yuanjing was only in the Five Elements realm, he had a dense cultivation and had learned over 100 types of mudras from the 1,000 mudras of spirit treasure unmovable meditation technique. In addition to that, this technique allowed one to cultivate the arhat's body. With a body like diamond, the person's defense was so astonishing that no weapons would be able to penetrate it. With this mudra, rays of light burst forth from monk Yuan Jing. In a radius of 10 yards around his palm, an area of colored glaze was formed. From the rays, Buddha voice could be heard, which was extraordinary. Qin Mu did not move from his spot. He suddenly raised his hand before lowering it, and with a loud boom, the colored glaze boundary, the spirit treasure Buddha, and the colored glaze mudra were all scattered by his palm. A huge pit appeared in the ground, and monk Yuan Jing had turned into a pile of mush inside it. All the monks jumped in shock while Duke Wei twirled his mustache in suspicion. Even though this barbarian's move is very brutish, his cultivation is irregularly strong. What is his name? Wei Yong immediately said, I think it was Pangong Tso. Duke Wei muttered to himself, this doesn't look right. This technique doesn't look like part of Grand Shaman Ruda scriptures.
Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 214, Grand Shaman Ruda Scriptures. Could this Pangong Tso have changed the Grand Shaman Ruda scriptures? Duke Wei was puzzled and muttered, I've fought with experts from Roland's Golden Palace before and their techniques required souls to cultivate. Even though their bodies were cultivated to a brilliant gold state, most of their techniques used souls as an offense method. Meanwhile, this young barbarian had instead walked the path of the corporeal body. His technique is also slightly different from Grand Shaman Ruda scriptures, it's a little too fierce. He was a first-ranking high official after all, someone on the cult master level. He could immediately see Qin Mu's extraordinary points, however, even with his extraordinary knowledge, he could only see that Qin Mu's Grand Shaman Ruda scriptures was similar yet different. He couldn't see that Qin Mu was actually using heavenly God creation technique. Each and every one of the 7 writings of creation from great educational heavenly devil scriptures had their own unique points. Heavenly God creation technique was able to imitate other people's technique, and Granny C had exhibited this technique once before, turning into the border dragon city Lord Fu Yundi, passing off a fake as genuine. Qin Mu killed monk Yuan Jing with a single palm, and all the other monks around felt indignant at the injustice. Another monk stood out and said loudly, You took the legacy treasure of our Nantua monastery and killed a person of our Nantua monastery. Do you really think there's no one in our Nantua monastery to match you? I, Yuan Shan, will face you. Qin Mu stretched his hand out and grabbed, his move giving off a crackling sound of thunder. Before monk Yuan Shan could finish saying his words, he fell flat on the ground. His body was still alive and there were no wounds on him. His heart was still beating as well. A few of the monks immediately went forward and checked for his breathing. Monk Yuan Shan was still breathing, but his eyes were closed. There's no need to check, his soul has scattered, Qin Mu said. His soul was taken away by my humble self and extinguished. Didn't you say it was a test of strength? The bunch of monks shouted in fury. Why did you land a killing blow time and again? Qin Mu said indifferently, This is the rule beyond the Great Wall. As long as one makes a move, there is no life and death. I thought the people of Eternal Peace Empire were brave, it never crossed my mind that all of you had been pampered to the point where you were afraid of death. Seems like I was mistaken, I should put this 1,000 banners pagoda back into our Roland's Golden Palace. There's no one fated among all of you. Presumptuous, a monk shouted out angrily and swung his monk staff forward. It had 9 hoops with 9 treasures hanging on them. With a swing, a clanking that could shake a person's soul rang out. Qin Mu stood motionless and let the monk staff hit his head. Only when it reached him, did he grab the staff and pull it over forcefully. Both of the monk's hands turned bloody from getting scraped. Pshhh. Qin Mu threw the monk's staff back, and it pierced the other's heart, nailing the monk to the floor. Duke Wei shook his head, monks of Nantua Monastery only know how to eat and drink. They have lived like princes over these years and the difference between them and him is too huge. None of them is his match on the same realm. The shaman spells of Roland's Golden Palace are bizarre. It's possible for them to destroy the opponent's soul, but something isn't right here. I've never seen his moves before. Could the Grand Shaman have created some new divine art? Wei Yong still couldn't find Qin Mu and thought to himself, he told me to come and look at something interesting, yet where is he hiding at? A few more middle-aged monks walked out of Nantua Monastery with grim expressions. One of them said solemnly, "Go to Supreme Court to report this and bring the authorities to arrest him. Another person shall go to Crown Prince Side Palace and invite the leader over." The eyes of the other monks lighted up, and they left in a hurry. Supreme Court was responsible for investigating, so there was no need for Nantua Side Palace to fight to the death with Qin Mu. They only needed the authorities to come forward and throw him into the prison. This way the Thousand Banners Pagoda would naturally return to Nantua Monastery. Since Qin Mu had killed people in the capital city, it was natural for Supreme Court to come forth and investigate the event. Furthermore, there were also people of Nantua Monastery in Supreme Court, which made things easier. A monk hurriedly ran into the Crown Prince Side Palace and shouted, "Leader, this is bad, someone has come to thrash our Nantua Monastery."
Sun Nantua was like a huge Buddha sitting cross-legged. When he heard what the monk said, he opened his eyes and looked towards the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince was a middle-aged man and didn't look much younger than Emperor Yanfeng. He twirled his mustache around his finger and said with a smile, "Could it be the devils of Heavenly Devil Cult coming to seek revenge?" That monk shook his head. "It's not Heavenly Devil Cult. It's a disciple from Roland's Golden Palace called Pangong Tso. He brought with him the legacy treasure of our Nantua Monastery, which was lost a few hundred years ago, the Thousand Banners Pagoda. He said he would give it to a fated person. As long as we could win against him while being on the same realm as he would give the Thousand Banners Pagoda over. Our senior and junior brothers went forth to challenge him and were killed without any explanation. By now, he has killed many of our senior and junior brothers." Sun Nantua's expression turned grim. "You guys don't cultivate Buddhist skills and are intoxicated by women and wine. It serves you right to have this defeat. However, Thousand Banners Pagoda is the legacy treasure of our Nantua sect, which was lost a few hundred years ago beyond the Great Wall. So we have to welcome the return of this treasure." The Crown Prince frowned slightly. Grand Preceptor, Heavenly Devil Cult just lost 2 heavenly kings. With the attitude of the number 1 sacred ground of the Devil Cult, they would definitely not let things be. Now that a disciple of Roland's Golden Palace has suddenly popped out, could it be a trap? I've heard that lying low for over 40 years, Heavenly Devil Cult has brought forth a new cult master, but we still don't know his background. Sun Nantua rose and said indifferently, "Your Highness, your news is a little outdated. The background of the new cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult has already been spread. I have received news from Great Thunderclap Monastery that this new cult master is the Imperial Academician of Imperial College. His surname is Qin and his name is Mu, and he's an abandoned person from Great Ruins. Not long ago, His Majesty raised his official position, making him a 5th-ranking palace grandee. It's actually him." The Crown Prince rose and said in astonishment, "Even though the new cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult is young, there are still strong practitioners and wise people in the cult, so we can't let our guard down. Grand Preceptor, I didn't think you would still have contact with Great Thunderclap Monastery. Could you arrange for a meeting?" "This is simple." Sun Nantua said while walking outside, "Old Rulai also wants to meet your Highness." The Crown Prince went after him, smiling. "I'll follow you to take a look at that Pangong Tso. I shall see if he's from Roland's Golden Palace or from Heavenly Devil Cult." Not much later, the inquirers from Supreme Court hurried over. When they met Duke Wei, they immediately greeted him. Duke Wei saw Sun Nantua and the Crown Prince walking over from the corners of his eyes and said in his loud voice, "The Emperor gave an order in the past that the Imperial Court will belong to the Imperial Court and the martial world will belong to the martial world. This is a grudge of the martial world, so there's no need for Supreme Court to meddle. Otherwise, with all the fighting in the martial world daily, could Supreme Court handle all of it? We'll see when an official of the Imperial Court dies. Lord Sun, Your Highness, come join in the fun here." Sun Nantua's expression sunk, while the Crown Prince smiled. "Grand Preceptor, it's best if we go over. If we don't," Duke Wei's loud mouth would blabber until the entire capital learned of it. Come to think of it, it's time to change that rule father had set back then. The rule Duke Wei had mentioned was one hat the emperor had set with all the big sects back in the day. They had decided that the imperial court will belong to the imperial court, while the martial world will belong to the martial world, each not interfering with the other. Even though the monks of Nantua Monastery were disciples of Crown Prince's Grand Preceptor's son Nantua, most of them didn't have an official position, so they could only be classified as people of the martial world. Son Nantua and the Crown Prince came to the side of Duke Wei and the rest. While they were talking, Qin Mu killed a couple more monks and sparked the fury of Nantua Side Palace. All of the monks were making a racket to gang up on him. The few middle-aged monks saw more and more people in the surroundings, and since they were afraid of throwing the name of Nantua Monastery, they immediately shouted at the monks to keep silent. "Duke, Your Highness, Lord Sun." Duke Wei looked over and saw another old lord coming over with a smile. "So it's Lord Yen Zhigui." Lord Yen is currently quite a popular man, standing beside the Emperor and Empress Dowager. Lord Yen immediately said, "Duke Wei is joking. Lord Sun, what's the matter? Nantua Monastery is in trouble. From the looks of it, that person is seeking revenge." Another few high officials of the imperial court walked over and one of them said, "Nantua Monastery has been criticized over the recent years for walking in and out of the courtyards of the women in the kings, dukes and ministers' families. There were complaints from numerous ministers, but it wasn't good for them to disclose it as it would affect their reputation. This time, I reckon they are all enjoying the commotion around here. Look, none of them are willing to get involved in it. Lord Sun is also here." They were all first and second ranking high officials in the imperial court and had purposely acted as if they had not seen Sun Nantua, not giving him a good look. Sun Nantua remained unmoved as he looked at Qin Mu. Eternal Peace Crown Prince was also sizing Qin Mu up and trying to see the origin of his technique. Send a divine arts practitioner up with his 6 directions divine treasure sealed. He will then unseal his 6 directions divine treasure mid-fight and land a killing blow. We'll just kill him directly. A middle-aged monk said in a low voice, "Yuan Kong, you shall go. We've already lost our face, so it'd make no difference if we lost slightly more. No matter what, we have to win the 1,000 Banners Pagoda back." Monk Yuan Kong acknowledged his words and sealed his 6 directions divine treasure at once as he went down to challenge Qin Mu. His cultivation surpassed Monk Yuan Jing's by leaps and bounds. Standing straight, his body was like a 1,000 arms Buddha that had an unmovable body and flailing arms. It was a different approach, but equally marvelous compared to the 1,000-armed Buddha of Thunderclap 8 Strikes. Qin Mu went forward to attack and heard loud thunder. The two of them had punched forward at the same time, and gales burst forth violently around them, surging in all directions and rustling everyone's clothes. Cracking sounds exploded from Monk Yuan Jing's body as he collapsed stiffly onto the ground. All of his bones were shattered. He was killed before he could even unseal his 6 directions divine treasure in time. Most of the monks of Nantua Monastery stared in anger and wanted to chop Qin Mu into pieces by their shouts. However, they were all blocked by the middle-aged monk. Duke Wei clapped in admiration and shouted out loudly, "The grand shaman Ruda scriptures of Roland's Golden Palace are so powerful. Another great monk is killed." Sun Nantua frowned slightly and said in a low voice, "This is Grand Shaman Ruda scriptures?" He had never met any of the experts of Roland's Golden Palace before and never seen this kind of technique before. On the other hand, Duke Wei had gone to the west borders before and clashed with the shaman kings of Roland's Golden Palace. Eternal Peace Crown Prince pondered. "I've heard that the shamans of Roland's Golden Palace use their souls to cultivate, transforming themselves into half-humans and half-demons, having all kinds of transformations." As he was saying this, another monk of Nantua Monastery went forward and unsealed the 6 directions divine treasure straightaway, wanting to execute his divine arts. He took unfair advantage of Qin Mu by immediately closing in on him and placing a madra on his chest. That monk of Nantua Monastery opened his 6 direction divine treasure, and his vigor increased exponentially as his divine art burst forth. He was even stronger than Yuan Kong and had cultivated over 400 treasures from the 1,000 treasures in Spirit Treasure Unmovable Meditation Technique. He had over 400 mudras, and he used them one after another. Instantly, the Buddha aura shone brightly with flowing colors. The monk looked like a Buddha who was angered while subduing demons and devils and received shouts of praise from the crowd. Superb cultivation, Monk Yuan Yu. A woman from some family exclaimed in admiration with a look of infatuation. While she was saying that, Qin Mu's body jolted, and he changed into the god transformation that had a bull's head, a human's body, and bull's hooves. His whole body shone with a brilliant golden luster as he stepped on 2 dragons. A bull's eyes appeared in the heart of his brows and a trail of flame shot out, slicing through Monk Yuan Yu's neck. Monk Yuan Yu could only feel himself flying backward. He looked over to see his body with an open neck spewing blood, no head in sight. His head flew to the bosom of the woman who looked infatuated, turning her complexion deathly pale as she screamed in astonishment before fainting. Piak, piak. Qin Mu's tail swayed and smacked twice on his buttocks, instantly turning them red. Eternal Peace Crown Prince's gaze flickered, and he said, "It should be the Grand Shaman Ruda Scriptures of Roland's Golden Palace. Tales of Herding Gods." Chapter 215, Night Market Slaughter. Duke Wei saw Qin Mu returning back to his normal form and was slightly bewildered. He looked towards the Imperial Preceptor's manor and thought to himself, Imperial Preceptor, that cold fellow, seems to have cultivated a similar technique before. I remember seeing him exhibit such a form before. Weird, Imperial Preceptor, this old boy, actually didn't come out to see the commotion. Did he get drained dry by all those palace maids the Emperor rewarded him with? Pangong Tso is really a disciple of Roland's Golden Palace? Sun Nantua was a little hesitant. Roland's Golden Palace was the #1 sacred ground beyond the Great Wall, and people in it called themselves shamans. They cultivated evil spells and used souls to cultivate, reconstructing their bodies into a form that was neither human nor demon. What Qin Mu had executed just now was a god transformation. Among those who reached the 5 elements realm, there were few who managed to cultivate god transformations. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, this monster, still complained about Imperial College not teaching profound knowledge, but it wasn't because it didn't want to teach. It was because there were not many people among the directorates who could cultivate a god transformation of 5 elements realm. In addition to that, Qin Mu's god transformation was out of the ordinary to top it. Even Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had been astonished that it seemed that both his corporeal body and his vital qi transformed into those of a god, and there were even signs of his spirit and soul transforming. There was also a change to his aura that was very extraordinary. For example, a bull's eye had grown at the heart of Qin Mu's brows when he used the flame god form earlier. A trail of flame had shot out from that eye and severed Monk Yuan Yu's head. This was a divine art that was formed by his corporeal body, vital qi, soul, and spirit transforming into those that were at the level of a god. Even if ordinary martial arts practitioners of 5 elements realm managed to cultivate their god transformations, they would be very different from Qin Mu's god transformation. Those people also wouldn't be able to execute such moves like what Qin Mu did. If even Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor didn't understand everything about this, then it was natural that Sun Nantua, the Crown Prince, and the rest of the people around wouldn't be able to recognize it either. They simply thought that it was the demon transformation of Roland's Golden Palace and exclaimed in admiration at how powerful and bizarre Grand Shaman Ruda Scriptures was. Lord Sun, a lot of your disciples were killed. Won't you challenge him personally? Duke Wei said while shaking his head. You should challenge him personally and defeat this barbarian. Only then could the reputation of your Nantua monastery be saved. The disciples of your Nantua monastery are simply lacking. The guy just now had executed his divine art of the 6 directions realm, yet his head was still chopped off by an opponent of 5 elements realm. This is simply embarrassing. Sun Nantua's gaze wavered, but he ignored the man. He knew that Duke Wei's mouth could swallow the entire sky, so if he replied to him, the other would definitely have a way to force him to challenge Qin Mu. But it was something he couldn't do at any cost. He had no certainty that he would win when fighting with the strength of the same realm. Even though he had cultivated the 1,000 of mudras in spirit treasure unmovable meditation technique to perfection, it was highly unlikely for spirit treasure unmovable meditation technique to defeat this barbarian. If he then executed his 6 directions realm, it would definitely not escape the eyes of Duke Wei, and if he started blabbering about it, that would be even more embarrassing. There was also no doubt that Duke Wei would blabber about it. Eternal Peace Crown Prince said in a low voice, "Grand Preceptor, I have a few good fighters with me. Maybe they could help you defeat this barbarian." Sun Nantua shook his head. "I'm thinking where the guardian of this barbarian is." Guardian? Eternal Peace Crown Prince was slightly stunned. Sun Nantua looked around and said, "Your Highness might not know this, but everyone who blocks the gate needs a guardian by their side. This is to prevent them from getting assassinated. For example, when Dao sect blocked the gate of Imperial College, Dan Yangzi was the guardian of Daozi. When Great Thunderclap Monastery blocked the gate of Imperial College, old monk Jingming was acting as the guardian of Fozi Fo Xian. For this barbarian to be so courageous, there definitely is a guardian from Roland's Golden Palace nearby. This person would definitely be an expert of the cult master level. Only when we find him and defeat him can we regain the face of my Nantua Monastery." He knew that with how he hated evil with a passion, he had offended numerous ministers daily. On top of that, with how the disciples of Nantua Side Palace practiced corrupted habits, many of the people in the city were waiting to see him make a fool of himself. If he wanted to quell this matter, the best choice was to find the troublemaker's guardian and kill him in a just and honorable manner. As for the youth's life and death, it wasn't his concern. Suddenly, Sun Nantua walked over to the young man, and the monks of Nantua Monastery couldn't help being surprised and delighted. They all made way for him. Qin Mu stood outside Nantua Side Palace, the corpses around him having already been dragged away. From the beginning to the end, over 10 monks had died at his hands, and the monks of Nantua Monastery were staring at him in anger. Yet they didn't dare to make a move. Once they noticed Sun Nantua coming forward personally, anticipation grew in their hearts. Sun Nantua raised his head and looked at the 1,000 Banners pagoda with a flickering gaze. "Who gave you such guts to take the legacy treasure of our Nantua Monastery, which Roland's Golden Palace had stolen a few hundred years ago, to block the gate of our Nantua Monastery?" Qin Mu shook his head. "I have come forward this time to sell this treasure to a fated person and not to block the gate of your Nantua Monastery. If other people want to get this 1,000 Banners pagoda, they can also come forth and challenge me. As long as they are fated, there's no harm in giving it to them. This great monk, if you have the ability, you can defeat me and take this 1,000 Banners pagoda away. If you don't have the ability, don't bother me doing my business." Eternal Peace Crown Prince walked over with a smile. "You said you want to sell this treasure. If you're selling it, there would definitely be a price. May I know how much you are selling it for?" Qin Mu took a glance at him and said, "Of course there is a price." The expressions of the monks of Nantua Monastery froze as their hearts filled with madness. If they had known they could buy it, why would they have fought to the death with this barbarian? Eternal Peace Crown Prince's spirit was roused and he asked with a smile, "What's the price?" "Just state any. There's nothing in this world I can't buy." Qin Mu's expression softened. "The price isn't too expensive. 100 flying ships with apothecaries and medicine boys allocated within each one. In addition to that, I want 200 cloud chariots. There's no need for gold-armored strong men, since there are plenty of strong men in our Great Wall." Eternal Peace Crown Prince's expression sank. "You're playing with me?" The flying ships and cloud chariots were military armaments, important weapons of Eternal Peace Empire. They had been invented by Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and a bunch of other strong practitioners. Cloud chariots were important weapons to attack the city, so if the flying ships and cloud chariots were sold to the Great Wall, this would be treason. Even if he was a crown prince, the emperor would still take his head. Qin Mu said indifferently, "If the crown prince can't afford this price, then don't bother me doing my business." Eternal Peace Crown Prince's expression sank. "I shall give this treasure to the fated one," Qin Mu said solemnly. "Those who think they can defeat my humble self can come forth to try. My humble self will stay here for 3 days. If no one can win against my humble self in 3 days, my humble self will return to the Great Wall. 3 days. Sun Nantua looked around and still couldn't find the guardian who was hiding in the shadows. He then thought to himself, with 3 days' time, I'll definitely find out where he is hiding. The monks of Nantua Monastery didn't come forward to challenge, so Qin Mu sat down on the street quietly and waited. The people watching the commotion gradually dispersed. Most of the kings, dukes, and ministers left their servants to watch the situation. Duke Wei brought Wei Yong to Imperial Preceptor's manor and knocked on the door. Elder Fu walked out with a smile and asked, "Duke, what's the matter?" "Where's Imperial Preceptor?" "Old Master has brought Madame out on a scenic tour." Duke Wei jumped in shock and stuttered, "Madame? What Madame?" Duke Wei might not know, but after the Emperor rewarded Old Master with 100 palace maids, Old Master was very happy. The next day, he got along with one of the women and held a wedding on the very same day, sharing their nuptial cups. After waking up, Old Master left with Madame, so they are no longer in the capital city. Duke Wei trembled violently, while a weird expression came onto his face. He stuttered out again, "Imperial Preceptor got married. He actually got married. This guy, I thought he didn't have any emotions. Never would have I thought he would get married. This scoundrel, he didn't even tell me." Elder Fu smiled. Old Master said to keep everything simple, so he didn't even inform the Emperor. Duke Wei let out a light breath. "Oh well, they are so poor I doubt they would even be able to hold a banquet. I will let my servants send a red packet and some gift boxes over." "When did Imperial Preceptor say he will be back?" Elder Fu shook his head. Duke Wei let out a sigh and muttered to himself, "There's a problem with that barbarian, but since he's staying here for 3 days, there's no rush. I'll wait for Imperial Preceptor to be back." The night fell and all kinds of flower lanterns were lighted up in all parts of the capital city. The night markets were opened up, and the street gradually became bustling with activity. Duke Wei let Wei Yong inquire around, and he came back to say, "Because it is nearing New Year's, there's less than a month left. Most of the merchants in the city are selling New Year's goods. So I see. Let us father and son take a walk around." Old and young men walked around the night market and saw many young ladies from influential families walking out of their chambers. They were well-dressed and carried a court fan. While they admired the flower lanterns, they would cover their faces upon seeing young men looking over. However, they would secretly size up those young men from behind their court fans. Wei Yong was from the old Wei family and didn't have much relation to Duke Wei. Only when he made a name for himself in Imperial College did he enter the other's eyes. As they walked around, Duke Wei gave him pointers for his cultivation. While speaking to each other, they walked past Nantua Side Palace, and Duke Wei was stunned when he didn't see Pangong Tso's figure outside. He only saw many monks coming out from Nantua Side Palace, and the one being surrounded was Sun Nantua. Other than him, there were also other guardians and abbots of the side palace. A monk hurriedly said, "Leader, the barbarians secretly escaped under the cover of the night market. I've already sent a few senior and junior brothers after him. Crafty, this barbarian actually pulled a feint and made us think he would stay here for 3 days. So we didn't expect him to slip away on the night of the very same day. Those senior brothers that are following him will not let him escape." Sun Nantua was expressionless. He told the monk to follow and hurried away while saying in a deep voice, "We'll make our move outside the city." Duke Wei's eyes lighted up, and he went forward with Wei Yong while smiling. "Sun Nantua, this guy seems sanctimonious, so I would never have expected him to be such a sinister and cunning person. If he killed that barbarian in the capital, people would be sure to criticize him. But if he made his move outside and got rid of the corpse, no one would know about it. Let us follow them and see how these monks murder and arson." Wei Yong followed after him, and thus the young and old men went after the strong practitioners of Nantua Monastery out of the capital. There were monks squeezing out from the crowd from time to time to report the traces of Pangong Tso to Sun Nantua. Gradually, they walked out of the city. There was also a night market outside the capital, and the lanterns there were brightly lit. The night market spanned for several miles, and there were people coming to and fro, making it extraordinarily bustling. Duke Wei brought Wei Yong and lingered behind the monks of Nantua Monastery. They unknowingly walked for several miles, and there was actually still a night market here. Not only was it still around, but there was also a village and a wide wooden gate which was over a dozen yards wide. A red wooden sign was hung on that wooden gate. Duke Wei raised his head and looked at this red wooden sign. On it there were 4 words, Teachings of Sacred Teacher. The corners of Duke Wei's eyes twitched, and he hesitated for a moment. Sun Nantua had already walked into this village, and the lanterns here were brightly lit. There were iron woks placed on the pillars, and inside them was concentrated kerosene that was crackling from the burning fire. There were all kinds of stalls in the village, and there was even a butcher's shop that slaughtered pigs and goats. Sounds of hawking rang in the bustling village, so everything seemed like an ordinary night market. "What's wrong, Duke?" Wei Yong was puzzled. "Teachings of Sacred Teacher, I have seen this phrase before." With a grim expression, Duke Wei said, "When the previous cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult, Li Tianxing, set out on a long journey and came to the side palace, he had hung this phrase outside his gate. Heavenly Devil Cult refers to their cult master as Sacred Teacher, which means that the Sacred Teacher is coming to teach them. The people in the night market are from Heavenly Devil Cult."
Duke Wei hesitated for a moment and walked in. Suddenly, a male and female elders walked out with a smile. "Duke, hold your step." Duke Wei was about to say something when an earth-shattering sound rang out. He hurriedly looked over and saw the peddlers, scholars, and beauties wandering around suddenly spring into action. All of the monks of Nantua Monastery were assassinated by the peddlers and passers-by beside them. Their heads flew into the air, and blood painted the sky crimson. Once these people succeeded in their assassination, they retreated and moved back into the houses on both sides. In a blink of an eye, all the monks beside Sun Nantua were left headless. Sun Nantua shouted out, and the body of 1,000 arms Buddha appeared. It was over 300 yards tall. With the Buddha aura shining brightly, the statue held 1,000 magical artifacts and looked awe-inspiring. At this moment, 20 elders came from all directions and pounced on Sun Nantua. With a loud bang, the 1,000 arms Buddha was shattered into pieces. Duke Wei was left dazed as the night market regained its bustling activity. There were people moving the corpses away, while others were drawing the river water to wash the ground. Teachings of Sacred Teacher. Duke Wei remembered this phrase and shuddered. He immediately said, "Let's go and not see the true face of this devil cult master." Suddenly, Wei Yong waved toward the village with a smile. "Brother Qin, why are you here?" Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 216, Guiding Souls. Qin Mu turned his head around and was stunned when he saw Wei Yong. A smile bloomed on his face and he waved his hand. "So it's Brother Wei and Duke Wei. Why are you standing outside? Come in quickly." Wei Yong immediately made eyes at him and said, "Come out quickly, I have something to tell you." "Come over here, something huge has happened at Imperial College." He was worried about Qin Mu's safety, so he had to pull him out of the pit. He thought to himself, Brother Qin must have come to take a walk, not knowing that this is the place where Heavenly Devil Cult is seeking its revenge, so he went in mistakenly. How dangerous is this? These fiends of Heavenly Devil Cult even dared to kill a first-ranking high official like Sun Nantua, who was a cult master-level existence, in an instant. I'm afraid that even the bone marrow would be squeezed out from that small body of Brother Qin. Duke Wei looked at the 2 elders blocking his path of retreat and a vein popped out on his forehead while the corners of his eyes twitched. Wei Yong, this scoundrel, he's even more of a troublemaker than me. I'm afraid I can't leave now even if I wanted to. Qin Mu raised his hand, and the old woman behind Duke Wei immediately went forward. Qin Mu tilted his head and said a thing or two to her. That old woman returned with a grin. "Duke Wei, little brother from the Wei family, please take a seat inside." The corners of Duke Wei's eyes twitched, and he took a long look at Qin Mu before taking in a deep breath. "Let us go in." As the 2 people went into the village, they could see that this place was only built recently. Everything was new, and there was even the fragrance of wood in the air. Duke Wei and Wei Yong saw Qin Mu walking farther into the village and braced themselves to follow him. Duke Wei asked in a low voice, "Yonger, how's your relationship with little brother Qin Mu? We have been through life and death together." He then added respectfully, "He was the one who saved me when the scholar's ship got attacked by Dragon Rider sect." Duke Wei started to get a headache. "Then did you save him?" Wei Yong shook his head. "He saved you, yet you didn't save him in turn, so what's this having been through life and death together?" Duke Wei's heart was anxious. "I can only take things step by step now. I can consider myself having been sabotaged by this little scoundrel. I don't know if my few meetings with Li Tianqing would be of any use." They came to the center of the village where there was a stage. It was only a foot above the ground and was constructed of wood. The stage wasn't huge, about 10 yards wide. Most of the Heavenly Devil cult's followers sat below the stage, and the old woman beside Duke Wei chuckled. "Duke, little brother from the Wei family, just take a seat. Don't worry, we've just mopped the floor, it's very clean." Wei Yong lowered his head to have a look and saw some dark red bloodstains. After noticing this, he couldn't stop himself from muttering under his breath, "I wonder if they cleaned up properly, or if there's still a human head or two lying around." Heavenly Devil cult had eliminated Nantua Side Palace as well as Sun Nantua in an instant, which showed how absurd their strength was. Even Duke Wei, who had experienced hundreds of battles, didn't dare to be reckless and thought to himself, even though Heavenly Devil cult has such a great fanfare here, the strong practitioners in the capital will definitely not be alarmed. Their actions were too quick back then, and I reckon they could kill us equally fast right now too. Under the stage, several hundred people sat in silence, waiting for the teachings of the sacred teacher. Wei Yong looked around and saw Qin Mu. He immediately waved his hand at him excitedly. Brother Qin, Brother Qin. Over here." Duke Wei wanted more than anything to press this little fatty down on the ground and stuff a few stinky socks into his mouth so that he would stop blabbering. Luckily, the followers of Heavenly Devil cult didn't seem to hear Wei Yong's blabber and remained sitting upright. Qin Mu smiled at Wei Yong and walked up the stage. Wei Yong jumped in shock and hurriedly said in a hoarse whisper, "Don't go up the stage, don't go up. That's where their sacred teacher gives his teachings." Duke Wei looked at him fiercely and scolded, "Rascal, keep your mouth shut." Wei Yong immediately shut up. Duke Wei said angrily, "Don't you see how tight-lipped I am? How did I have such a blabbermouth of a descendant like you? Haven't you realized it yet?" Wei Yong was stunned. When Qin Mu walked up the stage and turned around, all the followers of Heavenly Devil cult stood up and bowed. "Cult Master Sacred Teacher."
Qin Mu nodded and said, "Everyone, dispense with the formalities, sit." Everyone sat down. Wei Yong's mouth was agape, and there was a stupefied look in his eyes. He didn't regain his sense for quite some time. Duke Wei sighed and muttered, "I long knew that there was a problem with that Pangongtso. His grand shaman Ruda scriptures was a little different. From the looks of it now, it was most likely the cult master sacred teacher of Heavenly Devil cult making his move personally. Heavenly Devil cult actually chose a youth as their cult master. They really have guts." On the stage, Qin Mu also sat down and said, "Who here know spells regarding searching the soul?" A woman stood up and bowed. "Sacred teacher, I have some attainments." Qin Mu nodded. He suddenly executed Soul Guide and a sinister-looking gate appeared behind his back. Black fog poured out of the gate, and even the light from the kerosene in the iron walks died down. At this moment, everyone saw Sun Nantua standing in the sinister darkness along with the rest of the monks. Qin Mu said, "Hall Master, I want to know who are the accomplices of Sun Nantua that had allied with him to harm our two heavenly kings." "Understood." The female Hall Master went forward and took out a shining mirror. She executed her secret art and shone the light towards Sun Nantua. This mirror ray shone on the monk's soul, penetrating it and landing on the air behind him. All kinds of pictures appeared, which were the memories of Sun Nantua of when he was still alive. The pictures fleeted by rapidly and continued to go back in time. Soon, they reached the memory of when they had ambushed Heavenly King Lu. Crown Prince's Grand Tutor Yun Bashan, Crown Prince's Grand Protector Ting Yanju, Crown Prince's Junior Preceptor Cui Mingji, Crown Prince's Junior Tutor He Qianqiu, and Right Guardian Shui Bai recorded down the people who had appeared in Sun Nantua's memory. Her pupils contracted when her gaze landed on the last guy. And Eternal Peace Empire's Crown Prince Ling Yuxia. Qin Mu nodded and said, "Note it down. We'll send them on their way when we find the chance." Right Guardian noted down the name of Eternal Peace Crown Prince. Duke Wei's heart trembled violently, and he opened his mouth, yet no sound came out. Heavenly Devil Cult was too unbridled to even want to send the Crown Prince on his way. After all, that was the Crown Prince of Eternal Peace Empire. However, it wasn't good for him to say anything. Eternal Peace Empire may be flourishing now, but it had only started doing so in the last 200 years. Eternal Peace Empire only rose in power when Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had risen. Heavenly Devil Cult was instead a true behemoth that had existed from the ancient times. It had a long history and had been through the prosperity of countless countries as well as the change of dynasties. What happened was not only a deep hatred that was born from the death of their heavenly kings, but also a great humiliation, so this revenge had to be taken. Now that Duke Wei was in a precarious situation himself, how could he speak for the Crown Prince? That female hall master continued to look back into Sun Nantua's memories and searched all the way until they had ambushed Heavenly King Qian. Other than the ones named, there was an additional person during the attack, Crown Prince's Junior Protector Master Ruopiao. Crown Prince's Junior Protector of this generation wasn't Gu Linwan. Because he had been missing for 200 years, the position of Crown Prince's Junior Protector was given by the Emperor to Master Ruopiao. He was from Buddhism, and his religious name was Ruopiao. Yun Bashan and Cui Mingji were both cult master-level existences that came from Taoism. Ting Yanju and He Qianqiu were both from influential families that had followed great ancestor emperor to conquer the world. These 5 people, including the already dead son Nantua, belonged to the Crown Prince's faction. They had all been teachers of the Crown Prince. Among the 16 first-ranking high officials, there were 6 in the Crown Prince's faction. "Note down Master Ruopiao's name," Qin Mu said. "It's almost New Year's now, so let's let them have a peaceful celebration and eat their last New Year's Eve's family dinner. Sun Nantua is already dead and Nantua Side Palace has already been eliminated. Nantua Monastery is still around, so guardians and elders, raise Nantua Monastery without leaving any trace." All of the guardians and elders acknowledged this command. Duke Wei let out a sigh of relief. This young cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult was still thinking logically. If they went in now and killed 6 first-ranking high officials of the imperial court in a short while, including the Crown Prince, the Emperor would definitely investigate and find out that it was the doings of Heavenly Devil Cult. Eternal Peace Imperial Court was the orthodox one after all. If they went against the Imperial Court, there would be no place left for Heavenly Devil Cult. In addition to that, Tao Sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery would definitely hit them when they were down. When that time came, Heavenly Devil Cult would be in danger. Killing one every few days could minimize their risk to the lowest. For example, to kill Sun Nantua and eliminate Nantua Monastery, Qin Mu had used the identity of Roland's Golden Palace and brought Nantua Monastery's legacy treasure to bait the monks out. He also forced Sun Nantua into the open and lured him out of the capital city. Even though Sun Nantua was a cult master-level existence, killing him and eliminating Nantua Side Palace only took an instant. Furthermore, since they didn't make their move in the capital, there was no traces left, so it could be said that everything had been perfectly executed and covered up nicely. Even if the Emperor wanted to investigate, he wouldn't be able to find any clues. He would never know it was the doing of Heavenly Devil Cult. After Sun Nantua had died, the Crown Prince would definitely be alerted, and it would be hard to lay their hands on him. If they made a move, they would probably fall into an ambush, so it would be better for them to pass this period of time in waiting. At this moment, Qin Mu looked at Wei Yong and Duke Wei, revealing a smile. Duke Wei felt a lingering fear in his heart and chuckled. "Cult Master, I have a very loud voice." "I know," Qin Mu smiled. "If Duke shouted, everyone in the capital city would probably hear you quite clearly." Does Duke think the method our sacred cult used to kill Sun Nantua was clean and fast? Duke Wei's heart was hanging on a string. Qin Mu meant that he could eliminate them before they could even shout out a word. Duke Wei took in a deep breath. I once had quite a deep friendship with your cult master Li. Qin Mu tilted his head and looked at the left and right guardians beside him. Shui Bai replied. The previous cult master had met with him a few times. They didn't have a deep friendship. Duke Wei's complexion turned black, and he looked around secretly, trying to see if there was a chance to escape. Qin Mu said solemnly, Duke, my cult just lost 2 heavenly kings, so there are 2 seats empty. Since Duke belongs to an influential family but not to any sect, there shouldn't be anything stopping you from becoming our cult heavenly king. Am I right? Duke Wei gave 2 coarse laughs, then looked around and saw the 20-strong practitioners who had worked together to kill Sun Nantua standing up. The corners of his eyes twitched and he said, I'm Duke Wei and I have an official position, so where would I find the time to be your cult's heavenly king? Why don't you give me an easier task? Qin Mu smiled warmly down at him. Don't worry, our sacred cult is quite idle. We will only trouble Duke Wei when we need to fight. It'll be just a title. Besides, not only are the cult heavenly kings idle, even I, the cult master, am also very idle. If something like this hadn't happened, there wouldn't have been the need for me to come out personally. If Duke isn't willing to, we won't make things difficult for you. As long as Duke makes an oath to not say what you saw today, you may leave. Everyone has too many misconceptions about our sacred cult. They even think that we are devils that don't even blink when slaughtering people. Don't you think so? When he was done, he laughed out loud. The followers of Heavenly Devil Cult also laughed with him, but they were all putting on fake smiles. They looked like they were ready to fall onto the 2 intruders and silence them. I'm willing, Duke Wei immediately said. Wei Yong hesitated for a moment and said, Duke, shut up. Duke Wei turned his head around and scolded him. You have landed me in hot soup. The reputation I built throughout my whole life is all tarnished now in the hands of you little brat. If you didn't shout out for Brother Qin, we could have left unscathed. Wei Yong pouted and said, Old master, they said that they would let us leave, so why did you have to join their cult? Brother Qin is kind-hearted. He's not some kind of villainous person. Duke Wei blinked a few times. Do you really think he's not a villainous person? If he's not a villainous person, how did he become the cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult? Qin Mu coughed. Heavenly King Wei, we normally call ourselves Heavenly Saint Cult and not Heavenly Devil Cult. I'm also not a devil cult master. I'm a sacred cult master. Heavenly King Wei, keep this in mind. Wei Yong said excitedly, Old father, the title Heavenly King stands out much more than Duke. Brother Qin, assign me a role as well. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 217. See No Evil. Duke Wei rolled his eyes at this little fatty. This brat didn't find it a trouble to enjoy the bustling scene. After pushing his own old father into the pit, he even wanted to jump in himself. He was helpless. Heavenly King Yu, Heavenly King Shi, may I trouble you to brief Heavenly King Wei about our sacred cult? Qin Mu looked around, then said, Ladies and gentlemen, tear down this place and don't leave any traces behind. Wei Yong and Duke Wei immediately rose and saw figures flashing by. In a short moment, the entire village was cleanly dismantled and all the planks and pillars were stacked neatly. Even the iron walks, kerosene, and stands were all put away. A few hall masters unfurled their huge flags and gently covered the planks and pillars with them. When the huge flags were pulled back, the planks and pillars had all vanished without a trace. Couple more hall masters covered up the corpses of the Nantua monastery's monks, and when the huge flags were pulled off, the bodies had disappeared as well. Some other hall masters were shoveling a hectare or so of land and sending it into Mud River, to be washed away by the strong currents. Many things were cleanly executed in a short while, and soon no one would be able to tell that a bustling night market had once existed here. Qin Mu said, Disperse. The few hundred hall masters and guardians bowed to him. Some used huge flags and disappeared with a sweep. Some covered themselves with their clothing and left. Others blended into the darkness or drummed on their flower drum to leave. A few more pushed away their single-wheel carts. And soon, this place was no longer the bustling place it was before. It had sunk into pitch-black darkness, and only Qin Mu, Wei Yong, Duke, and the two heavenly kings were left. There were lights farther away. They were the ones that belonged to the real night market outside the city gate. Qin Mu rose to leave, leaving the four people behind. Duke Wei has just joined the cult, so Heavenly King Yu and Heavenly King Shi had to talk to him about the rules of Heavenly Devil cult so as to prevent any blunders. Qin Mu stopped the on-way back to the city as he enjoyed the night market and the flower lanterns. There were scholars and beauties who enjoyed themselves in the brightly lit streets and forgot to go home. There were also literary people who were showing off their literary excellence, martial artists who showed off their skills, and maidens laughing from time to time. The capital city has indeed a myriad of things, and is a place of glory for its illustrious people. Qin Mu was deeply moved. Suddenly goose feathers came swirling down from the sky as the snow arrived. The sparkling snowflakes landed on the shoulders of the people who had forgotten to go home, and many of them raised their heads up to the sky. Quite a number of them exclaimed, "Beautiful snow!" The snow was lighted up by the lamps in the city and became even more sparkly. There were quite a number of maidens standing under the roofs of the shops, stretching their hands out and letting the cool snowflakes land in their palms. The people on the street didn't decrease because of the snow. Instead, more and more people came out. It's snowing and the end of the year is coming. I reckon Imperial College will let the scholars go home for New Year's soon. I wonder if Granny and the rest are back in the village. Billowing white steam was given off by numerous stalls on both sides of the street, spreading a nice fragrance around. Qin Mu sat down in front of one stall and said, "Boss, 2 bowls of minced meat noodles. Add more chili oil." "Okay." After a moment, 2 big bowls of minced meat noodles were served with a layer of spicy red chili oil covering the surface. A few pieces of pork floated about, which was 70% lean and 30% fat meat. There were also some garlic shoots and leaves, bringing out the fragrance of this dish. Qin Mu took a bite and felt invigorated by the spiciness. He had only eaten once today and was feeling hungry. Thus, he radiated with heat as he slurped up the bowls of noodles. At this moment, someone laughed. "Old brother Qin, I've finally found you. You had promised to build an iron shell ship for him, now you can't run." "Boss, I want 4 bowls of minced meat noodles. Make them spicier. He will pay." When the person was done ordering, he sat down opposite of Qin Mu. Qin Mu looked at that person and smiled. "Brother Fan Yunxiao, why have you come to the capital?" The person was indeed Fire Bandit Fan Yunxiao. He had a knife scar across his left eye, but Qin Mu suspect it was pasted on. "Don't bring it up. What wretched luck I've had." Fan Yunxiao sighed. "It's sad just talking about it. My ship crumbled to pieces and disassembled in midair, so everyone inside almost fell to their deaths. I had to exhaust all of my strength to catch them in midair. However, I couldn't send them to the capital city, so I had to compensate them quite a sum of money. This morning, I went to find you, but you ended up not in Imperial College. I decided to take a walk around the capital and coincidentally saw you here. You must help me build an iron shell ship. Now that the world is peaceful again, I'm going back to my business." Qin Mu had a weird expression. With the world at peace, the business this bandit mentioned was his old business. He was planning to forego turning good and return to being a bandit once again. "Have you prepared enough black iron, black copper, and money?" Qin Mu asked. "And also the blueprints of the flying ship. Without a blueprint, it isn't easy to build one. It's all prepared. I bribed the official registrar of the shipyard and got a set of blueprints for the flying ship." The minced meat noodles were served and Fan Yunxiao took a big mouthful before exclaiming, "How spicy! How fragrant! I have also bought the black iron and black copper. They're in a shipyard beside Mud River, outside the city. I'm now bankrupt and can only rely on this iron shell ship to earn more money." Qin Mu smiled. "All right, I'll help you finish building the ship before Imperial College goes on a holiday. You can come to find me tomorrow." When he was done, he took out a great abundance coin and handed it to the noodle stall owner. That man used a towel to wipe his hand before smiling over at Qin Mu. Guest, I don't have the change for this. Do you have any change? 6 bowls of noodles only need 31. There's no need for change, Qin Mu said and left. Fan Yunxiao looked at his back figure and exclaimed, "How rich!" Qin Mu was still confused about the value of a great abundance coin, so he didn't know how much it was worth. When he comes out for a meal, even the most expensive restaurant only cost over a dozen great abundance coins for a whole spread of delicacies using the best ingredients. As for an ordinary roadside stall like this, the owner would be deeply grateful for a great abundance coin. The next day, Fan Yunxiao came to Imperial College. Qin Mu brought Hu Linger, the Dragon Qilin, and Dutian Devil King to the shipyard. There were quite a number of martial arts practitioners using true fire to smelt the black iron and true water to cool it down in this place, forging the pill furnace used for the flying ship. There were also those proficient in algebra that were measuring the sizes of the components and using vital qi to assemble them. There was also strong men forging and strong giants casting metal, as well as carpenters using sword qi to shave wood. The shipyard was very lively. Fan Yunxiao led them to a factory, and Qin Mu looked around. There were all kinds of wares over here. There was a great furnace used for smelting, irons and diamonds for forging, scaffoldings, wing wall with sliding rails, and also quite a number of black iron and black copper piled up at one corner. This factory was very huge and was big enough to store 6 to 7 ships properly. There was an official registrar waiting there, and he grumbled when he saw Fan Yunxiao. "Why are you here only now? I will only let you use this empty room for 10 days. Once they're over, I'm closing the factory down." Fan Yunxiao smiled and said, "10 days are enough." When he finished saying this, he stuffed a coin pouch into the other's hand. The official registrar weighed the coin pouch and said, "I'll close one eye for the next 10 days. Finish your ship quickly or else it'll be difficult for me when the supervisor comes." He then left the factory. Fan Yunxiao looked at Qin Mu and asked, "Old brother Qin, can you finish in 10 days? Qin Mu took a look at the blueprint and marked several changes before saying, "There'd be some difficulty if I was to do it alone. I'll need some helpers. My helpers and I will be building your iron shell ship here for the next few days, and you are not to enter the factory during that time. If you enter, you'll have to pay the price." Fan Yunxiao didn't understand what he meant but nodded nonetheless. "Don't worry, I'm not that curious of a person." Qin Mu nodded and chased him out of the factory. He then said to Hu Linger, "Help me call a few people over and let them enter this place using the teleportation flag." Hu Linger acknowledged and left immediately. After a while, Hu Linger returned and said, "Young master, Nature Craft Hall Master and Carpentry Hall Master said they would hurry over as soon as possible." Just as she was saying that, 2 huge flags appeared out of thin air. Under each of them were 100 followers of Heavenly Devil Cult. Nature Craft Hall Master and Carpentry Hall Master had led everyone and come right over. Qin Mu handed the blueprint to the 2 Hall Masters and asked, "Can you do this in 10 days? The 2 Hall Masters looked at the blueprint several times, and Carpentry Hall Master asked, "Cult Master wants to build an iron shell ship? The firepower of the pill furnace must be fierce enough." Qin Mu smiled. "I have some attainments in forging and can make a pill furnace with a high firepower. However, the shipyard only allows us to stay here for 10 days, so it'll be slightly rushed. We have to finish it in 10 days. Are you guys confident in doing it?" The Hall Masters of Nature Craft and Carpentry looked each other in the eyes and asked, "How many ships does Cult Master want to make? With our 2 halls working together, we can build 5 flying ships in 10 days. We can't do any more than that." Qin Mu was startled and muttered to himself irresolutely, "There's not enough black iron and black copper to build 5 flying ships. We have enough materials in our Carpentry Hall and Nature Craft Hall." Qin Mu's eyes lighted up and he smiled. "Then we'll build 5. The 2 Hall Masters immediately left to take care of the materials. 5 days later, Fan Yunxiao came by a few times, but he never dared to enter the factory. It sounded like a few hundred people forging at the same time, and he wanted to go check in on the situation, but when he thought of Qin Mu's words, he didn't dare to do so. Snow had been falling heavily for the last 2-3 days, so lots of it had accumulated on the ground. The Sky Supervising Department led a group of divine arts practitioners above to melt the snow clouds to disperse the heavy snow. However, the snow outside the capital city was still very heavy. Fan Yunxiao's curiosity grew heavier, and his ears twitched as he scratched his cheek in anxiousness. Another 2 days passed, and Fan Yunxiao could resist no longer, thinking to himself, there should be no harm in sneaking a look, right? He pushed open the gate to the factory and put his head in to have a look. Suddenly, an 8-armed and 4-faced devil god appeared in front of his eyes and grabbed his neck. Brat, how dare you peek? Fan Yunxiao immediately cried out, Old brother Qin, it's me, it's me. In the factory, over 200 heavenly devil cult's followers looked towards the source of the sound, their gazes landing on the troublemaker. They then turned their heads towards Qin Mu. Cult master, this man. Fan Yunxiao jumped in shock when he saw everyone. When he saw the clothing of these people, his expression changed, and he cried out, Heavenly devil cult! I saw nothing. I'm a blind man. Where is this place? Why am I here? Qin Mu was creating the pill furnaces when he heard the commotion. He then instructed the 2 hall masters, continue building. I'll handle this. Fan Yunxiao didn't dare to retaliate after being grabbed by the 8-armed and 4-faced devil god, who had a dragon Qilin by its side. With a smile, he said, Old brother Qin, I had wandered in here without paying any attention. I didn't see anything. Brother Fan, I told you not to come in and take a look. Now you have placed me in a very difficult situation. Qin Mu raised up 2 fingers and said with a smile, 2 choices. You are not new to the martial world. You should know what those 2 choices are. I'm in. Fan Yunxiao immediately said. From today onwards, I'm part of the sacred cult. Qin Mu laughed out loud and made Dutian Devil King place him down. From today onwards, we're brothers. In Crown Prince Side Palace, a middle-aged man who looked like a scholar hurried over to Eternal Peace Crown Prince's side. Your Highness, the Grand Preceptor has really died. There is not one monk that can be found in Nantua Monastery, so I reckon they had met with a treacherous assault. Yesterday, Abundance Prefecture had also sent news that Nantua Monastery was eliminated. The Emperor was angered and sent people to investigate, but no trace of the perpetrators was found. The people only said that it was the doing of Roland's Golden Palace, so the Emperor has an inclination to send troops beyond the Great Wall after New Year's. Eternal Peace Crown Prince had a grim look as he rose. Can't find any trace of them? I'm afraid it's because Father doesn't want to investigate, right? This was clearly the doing of Heavenly Devil Cult. Only Heavenly Devil Cult, the head of the devil, could execute such a secretive operation. They lost 2 of their heavenly kings, so they naturally wanted revenge. You shall head to Great Thunderclap Monastery and ask for an audience with Old Rulai. I want to know who exactly is the new cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult. With his hands behind his back, he added coldly, Nantua Monastery is also part of Buddhism path, so Old Rulai won't sit back and do nothing. Even though Grand Preceptor is dead, we can't lose our connections with Great Thunderclap Monastery. Old Rulai isn't satisfied with Imperial Preceptor, so he will definitely be glad to help.
Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 218, No Sun in the Sky. Your Highness, Heavenly Devil Cult is still one of the 3 biggest sections. Even though they haven't had a cult master for the past 40 years, they are still not to be underestimated. That middle-aged man continued, since they haven't been eradicated even after having no cult master for this many years and are still this powerful, this shows how united they are. If it was Great Thunderclap Monastery or Dao sect, would they dare to have no Rolai or Dao master for 40 years? If you underestimate Heavenly Devil Cult, you will only be at a disadvantage. Eternal Peace Crown Prince shook his head and said, Don't worry, I won't underestimate Heavenly Devil Cult. For it to get rid of Grand Preceptor Sun Nantua, the monks of Nantua Side Palace, and Nantua Monastery without any news reaching the outside world, they can't be seen as weak. How would I underestimate a cult like this? The middle-aged man gave a puzzled look, and Eternal Peace Crown Prince continued, There's no need for me to make a move against Heavenly Devil Cult. Dao sect, Great Thunderclap Monastery, these two sacred grounds have a far longer grudge with them than Eternal Peace Empire. The two sacred grounds want more than anything to get rid of this chief of the devil path, they just hadn't had the chance. What if? What if the Emperor of Eternal Peace Empire no longer stood against these sects? What if the Emperor of Eternal Peace Empire no longer supported Imperial Preceptor's reform? What if the Emperor of Eternal Peace Empire dismissed Imperial Preceptor? What if the Emperor of Eternal Peace Empire made the struggle between sects and countries vanish like smoke in thin air? Do you think Tao sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery would be willing to ally themselves with this emperor? Would Tao sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery be willing to support this emperor? The body of the middle-aged man trembled slightly as he looked at his superior. With a deep gaze, Eternal Peace Crown Prince said indifferently, "Even though my father has great skills and strategy, he is too trusting of Imperial Preceptor. With such trust in him, more than half of the Imperial Court belongs to him. The roots of our Ling family are going to be lost. Father has let Imperial Preceptor's power grow, so if Imperial Preceptor decides to rebel, there will be nothing to do. If Imperial Preceptor continues to grow like this, the world is going to change, and the dynasty will be changing hands." With a stern gaze, he said solemnly, "The older generation of our Ling family, the people with lofty ideals have all seen the first signs of this. This was the reason why Eighth Uncle supported me. Eighth Uncle had exhorted Father before, but Father remained obstinate and chose to believe in Imperial Preceptor. Eighth Uncle was helpless and hoped that I would change things. He got worked up and said with sorrowful anger, Eighth Uncle was a senior of Ling family who had conquered the world along with the ancestor. Eighth Uncle of our Eternal Peace Empire didn't mind bearing the name of traitor to the country and contacted the sects of the martial world as well as the officials everywhere. All of this was to pave the way for me, to pull Imperial Preceptor off his horse. What a pity that it was all for naught. He couldn't even have a complete corpse after death, his head having been severed by Imperial Preceptor, that wretch. There are even rumors in all levels of society saying that he wasn't loyal." Eternal Peace Crown Prince shed tears and slammed the table violently, both of his eyes red. "I can't watch as our Ling family's country gets destroyed under Father's hand, even if I have to become unfilial. I can't be both loyal and filial, so I will be loyal to the Ling family. Some things have to be done, I can't not do it." He walked to and fro in excitement. "How laughable, my brother and sisters are still leading a befuddled existence and don't know about the impending doom that's about to fall on our Ling family. Father has already been overridden by Imperial Preceptor, and if the Ling family is chased off the throne, they will all be annihilated. I can't let this happen, I can't let Imperial Preceptor, this devil, take over our nest. I will have to become the Emperor and stop all this from happening." In the shipyard, Nature Craft Hall and Carpentry Hall used 10 days to build 5 ships. Everyone installed the 15 pill furnaces that Qin Mu had forged and connected them to the bronze beasts. Qin Mu did minor adjustments to the blueprints of the flying ships and changed some layout. Every ship needed to have 3 pill furnaces installed. There were 3 bronze beasts on the ship, with 2 at the aft of the ship and 1 at the bottom. The heads of the bronze beasts could turn in all directions.
Changing the materials of the flying ship from wood to black iron and black copper had resulted in its weight increasing exponentially. 1 pill furnace was definitely not enough to make it fly, so Qin Mu added 2 more. Besides that, another bronze beast that could spew fire was added to the bottom of the ship, which could make it less shaky when taking off and landing. There were 3 big and 2 small ships among the 5 iron shell ships. Even though they were small, they were complete in every detail. All of the guest rooms in the hold of the smaller ships also had everything that was needed. Qin Mu made his men paint wood grains on the 5 ships so that they would look like 5 wooden flying ships. This was so they wouldn't be universally shocking. Fan Yunxiao was abnormally excited and kept walking to and fro around the 5 ships. "Cult Master, which ship is mine?" Qin Mu pointed at the smaller ship and Fan Yunxiao's expression instantly turned ugly. "Can't I get a bigger ship? Big ships are used for transporting soldiers and fighting in war. Their speed ain't as great as that of the smaller one," Qin Mu explained. "If you want to continue being a fire bandit, it's best for you to choose the small one." If you want the big one, you can use it to ferry passengers. However, big ship consumes more medicinal stones and you might not earn enough from ship fares to buy them in times of peace. Fan Yunxiao hesitated for a moment. In that case, I shall choose the small ship. What are you going to use the other small ship? Even though it was a small ship, it wasn't really that small. It was 30 yards long, 10 yards wide, 15 yards tall, and able to ferry around 20-30 people. Qin Mu had made the disciples of Heavenly Devil Cult change their clothing before driving the 3 big ships out. He then sent the smaller ship to Imperial College while saying, "It's almost New Year's. This smaller ship will be my mode of transport. Incense Master Fan, you have already entered the Bandit Hall of our sacred cult. Bandit Hall is part of our sacred cult, so I won't say anything more. It's a way of living for our cult's disciples after all. You can plunder people's riches, but you can't take their lives nor rape them. I was from Dao sect, and even though I was chased out by old Dao Master, we fire bandits never take people's lives, nor do we ever rape them. Don't worry. There are 360 trades, and each trade has its own master. I will definitely do my best and not let down cult masters' great hopes for me." Qin Mu was flabbergasted. He only waved his hand after quite some time while looking at Fan Yunxiao boarding the small ship with excitement. More than a dozen fire bandits were pushing the ship out of the factory using the wooden rails with all of their strength. The snow outside had already stopped, but with the cold weather, there were few people in the shipyard. Fan Yunxiao shouted, "Light up the furnace, we're taking off. This ship will be our new cloud-chasing pirate ship. We're no longer turning good. Fly the flag of our fire bandits. What's outside is the sky and countless riches." The iron shell ship slowly rose, its speed gradually increasing. When the ship suddenly broke through the air, Qin Mu could hear the fire bandits crying out, "So cold! So cold! Boss Fan, don't stand on the deck. Come in to get warm." Qin Mu saw them off before returning. He then brought the Dragon Qilin, Hu Linger, and Dutian Devil King back to the capital. Lots of snow had fallen a couple days ago, so even though it had stopped, the sky was still filled with gloomy dark clouds. No sunlight could be seen as cold wind raged on, freezing everything it found. "It's been 10 days since we saw the sun," Hu Linger said as she looked up at the sky. She couldn't sit still in the factory and frequently ran outside. Qin Mu was slightly stunned. There has been no sun for the past 10 days? It seemed like the snow was quite heavy, but why didn't the sun come out even after the snow had stopped? He didn't think too much about it. Now that it was getting closer and closer to New Year's, there was also some flavor of it in the capital as everything was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. Qin Mu walked into the city only to see flying ships going up into the sky. Besides the soldiers on the ships, there were also some ministers of the imperial court. He wondered why they were going up. It doesn't seem like they're going to war. Qin Mu raised his head but only saw the dozen flying ships going higher and higher. They headed up above instead of any horizontal direction, and he was left bewildered. He returned to Imperial College and saw many scholars discussing New Year's. No one was talking about why the ministers had flown into the clouds. There were also some scholars discussing about the flying ship that had docked in front of scholars' residence. I wonder which rich son actually got a flying ship as a mode of transport. The next day, the sky was still gloomy. Gu Linwan gathered all the scholars of Imperial College and announced, "The Emperor has called a holiday for the New Year's, so you can now all return home." The entire mountain erupted in cheers. Qin Mu raised his head and saw a couple more flying ships rising into the sky, towards a higher altitude. Meanwhile, cloud-chasing pirate ship, Fan Yunxiao stood at the bow while trembling and picking the icicle hanging from his nose as he looked down. "Second brother, where are we now?" A fire bandit looked down and distinguished the terrain before saying, "We have already reached Li River. Why is snowing over Li River as well?" Fan Yunxiao was astonished. Pointing at the mountains blanketed in white, he said, "That's not right. Li River is situated at the southernmost border of the southern borders. Even when it's heavy winter, it would usually be bare. Why has the snow covered even this place this year?" Most of the fire bandits came up from the hold of the ship and looked down, clicking their tongues in wonder. Suddenly Fan Yunxiao's expression changed slightly. and he hurriedly asked, "We're over thousands of miles away from the capital city, right? Yet have any of you seen the sun?" The dozen of bandits looked at one another and all shook their heads. Fan Yunxiao took a cold breath and looked at the gloomy cloud in the sky while muttering, "A cloud that covers a radius of a few thousand miles. Could this F***er be an ordinary cloud? And this snow, even the southern border, is under it. This coming year might not be a year of peace, but instead might be a year of disaster with starving people everywhere. If people starve and have nothing to eat, they will start to rebel. I thought I could earn quite a sum of money during the couple years of peace. Second brother, increase the firepower of the pill furnaces to their maximum. Let us continue heading south." Over 2 hours later, cloud-chasing pirate ship had flown out of the southern border and into the sky above the southern sea. Suddenly, a bright light in front of them dazzled their eyes, and when they flew over there, they were met with the light of a blazing sun shining freely, illuminating the surface of the sea like it was a sapphire. Fan Yunxiao turned his head back to have a look and sucked in a deep breath. An incomparably ginormous gloomy cloud shrouded the entire territory of Eternal Peace Empire. In Imperial College, Qin Mu packed up his luggage and prepared to return to Great Ruins when a directorate walked over while shouting in a loud voice, "Palace Grandee, the Emperor has ordered that all officials with 6th ranking and above have to head to the Imperial Court for discussion. Anyone who does otherwise will be punished." Qin Mu placed his luggage down and said to Hu Linger, "You guys shall remain here for now. I'll go to the palace and take a look." It was his first time attending the Imperial Court, and when he came to the Imperial Court Hall, there was already a vast crowd there. Thousands of officials had squeezed in. Luckily, the Emperor's audience hall was huge enough to accommodate these many people. Emperor Yanfeng sat on the throne in the audience hall and had a worried look on his face. He would ask time and time again, "Is Imperial Preceptor here?" When he heard that Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had yet to come, the worried look on Emperor Yanfeng's face grew even heavier. After some time, Emperor Yanfeng cleared his throat and said in a resounding voice, "No need to wait for Imperial Preceptor anymore. My dear ministers, it's been over 10 days since you have last seen the sun. Is that right? I too have not seen the sun for over 10 days, and not only me, the entire Eternal Peace Empire had not seen the sun for over 10 days. I received memorials from officials all over the world that snow is falling everywhere. From the northern desert to the southern sky, from Sunrise Island in the east to Secret Waters Pass in the west, lots of snow fell, 6 to 7 days worth of it." The Emperor stood up from the dragon throne and pointed upwards with his trembling finger. "A cloud has covered the entire territory of our Eternal Peace Empire. Tales of Hurting Gods." Chapter 219, Meteorological Attack. When he said it, the hall begun to buzz with discussions. It was almost impossible for something like the single cloud covering the entire Eternal Peace Empire to happen, yet it did. Eternal Peace Empire had a broad territory spanning 90,000 miles from east to west and 80,000 miles from north to south. Now that the entire territory was under snow, and even for 6-7 continuous days, it was something that should have been impossible. Divine arts practitioners had the ability to summon wind and rain, but they could only make the rain descend and the wind blow in a small area. They could never control the kind of spell that could cover the entire Eternal Peace Empire. However, this was no natural disaster. It rarely snowed in the south of Gold River, while it was even more impossible to have rainy or cold weather at the south of Surging River. On top of that, when it came to Li River, all 4 seasons were like summer, so there was no possibility of snow there. If that wasn't enough, the snow had descended on the whole empire at the same time. Emperor Yanfeng gave a cough and quieted all the ministers. Minister of Agriculture. There are probably quite a number of ministers who don't understand how scary this snow is. You can explain it to them. An old minister stepped out of the ranks. He was the Minister of Agriculture of Eternal Peace Imperial Court and managed the agriculture of the entire empire. He bowed and said, "Your Majesty, ministers, this snow disaster doesn't affect the next year's harvest for the villages to the north, since they are used to enduring through winter and had made preparations. The crucial point is the south. After this huge snow, the villages of the south will probably be frozen clean. When the next year comes, the south would most likely have no harvest at all. The Minister of Revenue immediately asked, Minister of Agriculture? By the south you mean? Everything south of Gold River. All of the ministers took in a cold breath, and even Qin Mu was shocked. He also had a geographic map of Eternal Peace Empire. Gold River originated in the Great Ruins and stretched all the way to the east for tens of thousands of miles before entering the ocean. The land south of Gold River was 2/3 of Eternal Peace Empire's land. This meant that 2/3 of the Empire's land would have no harvest. This, Your Majesty, I think we should channel the rations and fodder from all places to the south, preparing to send relief. Grand Servant stepped out of the ranks and bowed. The South just went through a war, so there are many counties that still require relief. I'm afraid that the rations there have already been depleted, so may Your Majesty channel rations from the north to save those people from the disaster. Minister of Agriculture sighed. As of now, we can't channel anything. Lords might not know, but the war had depleted rations and most of them are gone everywhere. If we channel the rations to the south now, they will only be eaten by the starving people. Once these rations are finished, we won't even have the grains to plant anymore, and there will be nothing to eat when autumn comes. Lord Grand Servant, if the starving people have nothing to eat, they will start eating humans. Are we supposed to just let the people of the south starve? Minister of Agriculture said, provisions would have to be transported to the south, but we must provide them in limited quantity. We need to give them just enough to survive. There are actually some granaries in the south, but they all belong to influential families and landlords. If we want to touch their provisions, I'm afraid they would instigate the disaster victims to rebel. Your Majesty! Emperor Yanfeng's expression sunk, and he said, I will think of something regarding the provisions of the influential families and landlords. Continue. Yes, other than the south, there's another huge disaster looming over us, said Minister of Agriculture. The north is usually cold during winter, but it's even colder this year. Walking through a few counties in the north, I discovered farmers chopping down trees to burn them for warmth. This resulted in many forests being cleared out, turning the area bare. For the north, which can endure the cold to resort to chopping trees for warmth, you can imagine the current situation in the south. If the trees in the south are completely cleared out, mountain torrents, landslides, and floods will definitely become endless. A natural disaster can result in a man-made disaster, and a man-made disaster can result in many more natural disasters. However, if we don't let the victims chop down trees for warmth, I'm afraid that countless people will be frozen to death. When that time comes, I'm afraid most of the families will die. Emperor Yanfeng let out a deep breath, and the ministers of the imperial court also became quiet. It was so silent that even the noise of breathing became jarring. If they didn't chop down the trees to burn, the farmers would be frozen to death. Yet if they chopped down the trees, there would be more disasters. A snow disaster had made a huge empire like Eternal Peace Empire sink into circumstances in which they had to make a difficult choice. Minister of Agriculture continued, the crucial point is that we don't know how long this cloud will last. If the gloomy cloud disperses in a few days, we can minimize the damage to the lowest. But if it doesn't, the empire will be in danger. I understand. Emperor Yanfeng leaned back, looking powerless. Now, my dear ministers, do you understand how dangerous the situation is, right? Lately, some renegades rebelled, but I was still unworried and didn't pay any attention to it. I knew nothing would come out from what they were doing, and they would be eradicated by Imperial Preceptor and my dear ministers. However, this snow disaster and this cloud is going to break our Eternal Peace's fate. Dear ministers, do you have a way to solve this? All of the civil and military ministers fell silent. Even with their remarkable abilities, they couldn't blow away the cloud or melt the snow. Emperor Yanfeng looked at his ministers and felt angry and anxious in his heart. Snow, a single cloud, were they going to tear this empire apart, destroy their 100 years of effort? A civil official said, I think this is because Imperial Preceptor's reform has angered the heaven. Emperor Yanfeng burst into anger. Drag him out and execute him. That civil official immediately knelt down and cried out with all his might, Your Majesty, heaven has its heavenly law, and Imperial Preceptor's reform is going to change the heavenly law, so heaven is angered. People will suffer from the anger of heaven, unable to do anything about it, Your Majesty. Man! Emperor Yanfeng was infuriated. A disaster is upon our empire and you're still eager to delude people with lies. If he's not executed now, will I have to do it myself? The guards inside the emperor's audience hall dragged that civil official away. The cries of the man gradually moved farther away. Emperor Yanfeng paced around anxiously, suppressing his anger. I want ministers that are able to work and are not useless puppets that only know how to slander. This reform is what I want and not what Imperial Preceptor wants. If heaven is angered, then it should be angry at me and make me suffer. Imperial Preceptor is a capable minister. Not to say 500 years, it is even rare to find someone like him within 1 to 2,000 years. You all shall think of a solution for me. If you can't think of anything, there's no need for any of you to go home and no need for you to celebrate New Year's. Your Majesty, why not store the cloud away? A voice asked from the audience hall. Since you can't chase it away, why not just store it away? All of the ministers looked over at the speaker, and Emperor Yanfeng's gaze also moved on him. So it's Palace Grandee. What great idea does Palace Grandee have? Why not share it with all of us? Qin Mu said, I have seen treasures like the fire bottle gourds in the army which the soldiers used to store their true fire. When it comes time to battle, they would release the fire stored inside. When Hall of Supreme Healing slipped up in refining medicine and paralyzed the entire Imperial College, the former Grand Chancellor had used a bottle gourd to store away the anesthesia to save Imperial College. I was thinking if we could use treasures like the bottle gourd to also store away this dark cloud. Emperor Yanfeng looked at General of Heavenly Strategies and asked, General Qin, do you think this can work? General of Heavenly Strategies had the surname Qin and name Jian. He was the head of the generals and also the sect master of the influential Qin family in the capital city. He stepped out of his ranks and said, Your Majesty, what Palace Grandee suggested is plausible. However, there aren't this many fire bottle gourds in the army. The ones we use are wisteria bottle gourds which are handed to the vermilion bird troops all around the world. There is a total of 1 million such bottles in the entire empire, and this amount would only be enough to store away 1 province worth of dark cloud. With so many provinces in the empire, it isn't possible to rely solely on the fire bottle gourds from the army. Qin Mu then spoke up. Even though there aren't many bottle gourds in the army, the empire has many officials that cultivate spells and influential families with powerful people. There are numerous strong practitioners in the imperial court as well, and with a decree from Your Majesty, you could order all them to create treasures to store away the dark cloud in the sky. With so many people, the county magistrates, young magistrates, and magistrates who are also strong practitioners could take responsibility for the area under their jurisdiction. With the strong practitioners of the army going to help out in each and every area, we could expect to mostly get rid of the dark cloud. Emperor Yanfeng pondered it for a moment. There would be some difficulty in mobilizing the divine arts practitioners of the entire empire to get rid of the cloud. There are some wandering divine arts practitioners in the martial world who don't listen to the orders of the imperial court. Therefore, we will need Your Majesty to do it yourself, showing an example to the whole world, said Qin Mu. If Your Majesty leaves the capital and goes to each province to store away the dark cloud, the people will naturally follow suit. Most of the civil and military officials looked at one another. If the emperor left the capital to store away the dark cloud, the remnants of the sects would probably take advantage of this to assassinate him, since their rebellion had just been quelled. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor went to great ruins for battle and got ambushed, which resulted in him returning in failure. If the emperor was to leave the capital, he would definitely have to suffer all kinds of assassination attempts. Just as everyone was about to say something, Emperor Yanfeng's eyes lighted up and he smiled. Right? Minister Qin, do you have any other ideas to handle this snow disaster? The snow disaster is already here, and I'm helpless to do anything. Qin Mu said, I've heard of a sentence once. The path of a saint is not different than the one of a common person. With so many divine arts practitioners in the world, if the sun came out and melted the snow, You could have these divine arts practitioners personally go down to help clear up the frozen villages. They could help plant the grains again, and there might even be harvest next year. If there's no wind, we can invite the divine arts practitioners to send wind. If weeds grow, invite divine arts practitioners to remove the weeds. If there is insect damage, invite divine arts practitioners to remove the insects. If there is frost damage, invite divine arts practitioners to use fire to get rid of the frost. Your Majesty, these are words of the devil. A civil official stepped from the ranks while trembling with anger. Your Majesty, what Palace Grandee said are words of the devil. This would damage the country and hurt the people. He should be executed on the spot. Emperor Yanfeng smiled. His sentences were very correct, so why are they words of the devil? Those aren't words that would damage the country and hurt the people, but instead, they are good words that would heal the country and save the people. Your position is revoked. Go home and reflect on yourself. Minister Qin, what other good strategies do you have? Qin Mu pondered and said, Your Majesty can also make Minister of Sky Supervision watch the weather of all area. During flood years, we can store the rainwater into spirit treasures like the bottle gourds. During years of hurricane, we can store the winds inside spirit treasures. We can store tornadoes, hails, lightning, all of them for our own usage. If we meet with years of drought, we can release the rain, and if we fight with other countries, we can release the hails, snow, lightning, and tornadoes. This way, we could deal with our own weather and attack the enemy countries. The snow disaster just now came close to destroying such a glorious empire like eternal peace. So if this kind of meteorological divine art was used on an enemy country, which one would be able to withstand it? You Majesty, controlling the meteorology is defying the heavenly laws. These are words of the devil. Another civil official stepped out of the ranks and kowtowed repeatedly until his head bled. These are words of a true devil and will really destroy our empire. Your Majesty, please quickly kill this demon of the devil path. You're removed from your position. Emperor Yanfeng waved his hand and smiled. If you don't have any ideas, don't spout rubbish and slander Palace Grandee. What's the point of me giving you a high salary every month? This snow cloud is the one destroying our empire. Men, drag him out. Palace Grandee, talk is easy, action is hard. You shall follow me for the disaster relief. Qin Mu hesitated and said with embarrassment, I still have to go home for New Year's. I can recommend some people who could help your Majesty. Emperor Yanfeng laughed out loud and felt that the dark cloud which had shrouded his heart had dispersed. He waved his hand. Approved. That's fine. I'm in need of people now, and if the people you recommend are really useful, I won't leave you wanting.
Duke Wei's heart trembled slightly. Heavenly Devil cult is going to enter the imperial court. Come to say of it, I'm now the heavenly king of Heavenly Devil cult and have long entered the imperial court. This young cult master really knows how to curry favor. With Imperial Preceptor not in the imperial court these days, he took the chance to plant his men. If Imperial Preceptor were to stay away for a few years, I'm afraid even the Emperor would become part of Heavenly Devil cult. Where exactly did Imperial Preceptor go? He went on such a long tour with his wife and doesn't even bother to come back when such a huge thing has happened. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 220, No End to Trouble. This cloud is big enough yet not big enough. This cloud and snow in Eternal Peace Empire are more like a warning. In the west, on majestic Mount Meru, the golden-topped Great Thunderclap Monastery stood tall. It was situated atop the layer of clouds, and old Rolai looked towards the territory of Eternal Peace Empire. He could see the sun shining with a golden brilliance, which made the sea-sized cloud abnormally bright. Once, in the long history of Great Thunderclap Monastery, we have witnessed such a meteorological attack. Below old Rolai's seat, the numerous bodhisattvas, venerables, arhats stood in great numbers and listened to his words. That meteorological attack was even larger than this one. It came with heavy snow and a similar dark cloud. The people had no way to make a living, which resulted in natural disasters year after year, and only God knows how many people died. Venerable Ku, go and fetch the Emptiness-era Morning Emperor scriptures from the depository of Buddhist texts and flip it to the 1367th page. A monk with a worried frown stood up and went away. After a moment, this venerable Ku carried over a thick scripture and flipped to the page which old Rolai had mentioned. Emptiness era, morning emperor year 6420, changes in the meteorological phenomenon, snow fell for 30 days, cloud covered 80,000 miles, no sun could be seen. Starving people were everywhere, bandits rose in all places, and morning emperor ordered the gods and dragon kings to get rid of them. Morning emperor year 6430, meteors descended from the sky, meteor shower was like a flood, volcanoes erupted in tens of thousands, the earth trembled, and 1,000 of fissures opened up, drying up the rivers. The ocean was emptied. The next year, the sun disappeared, there was no light from the two heavenly bodies. Behind old Rolai, the hearts of teacher poor and the rest trembled heavily as they cried out, Rolai, this is great ruins. Old Rolai turned his head back and looked towards the vast uncivilized territory behind Mount Meru. This ancient scroll records the last moments of the divine kingdom of great ruins. The heavy snow and the dark cloud were merely the first warnings. However, the warning now is much earlier than I expected. Earlier and lighter. It seems like Eternal Peace Empire's doings have caught the eyes of the ones above. Teacher Poor, True Lord Tian, and the rest were blown back, and they muttered, great ruins. If the Emperor wants to quell this disaster, the only way is to stop the reform immediately and surrender himself, begging forgiveness from heaven and his people. Old Rolai looked away with a deep gaze. Otherwise, this snow disaster will only be the start, there would be even more terrifying meteorological phenomenon following after. And they will no longer be just snow and a dark cloud. They'll consist of meteor showers, volcano eruptions, dried up rivers and oceans, the vanishing of the sun and the moon. This is the wrath of heaven, the anger of heaven that the people have to bear. This is too much. Rolai, Eternal Peace Crown Prince has sent a person to seek an audience with you. Old Rolai was slightly stunned, then he smiled. This Highness has still come to find me. Invite him forward. At your command. Old Rolai smiled at the monks surrounding him and said, His Highness is quite extraordinary, and he might even be the savior of the world. The Emperor might be obstinately clinging to his course, but the Crown Prince is not the same. His envoy should be worth meeting. Dao Sec's Kunlun Jade Void Mountain was called Jade Void Paradise and was like a world unto itself. The 4 seasons on the mountain were like spring and seemed like a sacred ground for immortals. It was no inferior to Mount Meru. The cloud covering eternal peace is a serious yet not overly dangerous warning. It is much more trivial compared to the destruction of great ruins, old Dao Master said to the Taoists of Dao sect with a speed that was neither too fast nor too slow. Our Dao sect was against Eternal Peace Empire's reform not for our own personal gain, but for the Dao. That reform ruined too many rules and too many principles, so it was destined to fail. It's a pity Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's knowledge was too shallow, and he didn't understand the great terror that would descend. His gaze was deep, but he had an air of calmness as he said slowly, back then, when Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was still young, he had come to Dao sect to meet me. I could see that he was out of the ordinary and had high expectations for him, so I had allowed him to browse through the legacy scriptures of our Dao sect, hoping he would have success in the future. As for sectarian bias, that was thrown to the back of my head.
For such a talent, I naturally had to discard sectarian bias and groom him to the best of my ability. When he had become the Imperial Preceptor, my expectations turned into disappointment. Why? It's because Dao models itself after nature. Most of the experts of Dao sect sat and listened quietly. Dao models itself after nature, so we Daoists can summon the wind and the rain, but we can't change the wind and the rain, nor can we change the nature and the great Dao. I actually had no prejudice against Heavenly Devil cult. On the contrary, I still admire some of its doings. However, our paths are different. Why so? Dao Master shook his head. Dao originates from nature, yet Heavenly Devil cult wants to use the Dao to change the nature. This is the biggest difference between our Dao sect and Heavenly Devil cult. This is also the reason why Heavenly Devil cult is being referred to as the devil. Most of the Taoists of Dao sect were slightly shaken. Dan Yongzi said, I've observed the disciples of Heavenly Devil cult using spells to move the clouds and spread the rain. During periods of drought, they would make rain fall and collect money from the farmers. There were some people using drilling spells to create wells, solving the problem of having no drinking water. There were also people who would use true fire to smelt ores and retrieve the metal to forge farming equipment for sale. There were even some devil cult's disciples that collected money from farmers to hunt down demon beasts. Heavenly Devil cult is indeed going against the nature which Tao originates from, changing the nature. Tao Master said, using the path, skills, and divine arts for the common people is to change the nature, to destroy it. Changing the nature and destroying the nature is changing the great Tao and destroying the great Tao. Heavenly Devil cult's teachings are wrong, so they can only move into the devil path. Another of their teachings is to act straightforwardly, to follow the course of nature. This means to let one's desire run wild and do as you please. If this isn't what a devil does, then what is a devil? He sighed and said, Imperial Preceptor is too deeply influenced by Heavenly Devil cult, which is why he has used Heavenly Devil cult's ideology to run a country. The disasters that great ruins experienced will also come to Eternal Peace Empire. This is the punishment of heaven, the calamity sent by heaven. Be that as it may, the people are innocent. Tao Master softened his tone then. You all shall go down the mountain. The punishment from heaven that the Emperor and Imperial Preceptor have invoked shall not be bore by the people. Go and help the commoners that are in trouble and save as many people as you can. When you save the people during your travel, you can also find youths with good foundation and continue adding more descendants to our Tao sect. At your command. The experts of Tao sect all went down the mountain. Tao Master looked up at the cloud above Eternal Peace Empire and sighed. This shouldn't be bore by the people. If Imperial Preceptor and the Emperor still obstinately persist in going about things the wrong way, my Tao sect will have no choice but to enter the secular world. Qin Mu contacted left and right guardians and passed down his decree. You shall assist the Emperor in sending disaster relief and storing away the dark cloud in the sky. You can send our disciples to the south to help get rid of the frozen crops and replant them. Many people will die in this snow disaster, so just do your best and save as many people as possible. Also, make sure that our disciples remain careful, since there will definitely be riots with such a disaster around. The world will certainly not remain at peace. At your command. Left Guardian Ning Daoqi hesitated for a moment, then said, Sacred Cult Master, what identity shall we assume to assist the Emperor? If the Emperor confers a title on us, shall we accept it? Qin Mu thought for a moment. Assist the Emperor with your own identities and with the power of the sacred cult. If the Emperor confers a title on you, just accept it. If the Emperor can tolerate Imperial Preceptor, he can tolerate us too. We are part of Eternal Peace Empire, so there's no need for paranoia. He paused for a moment, then added, Even if the world is in chaos, the divine art practitioners who are used to being high at the top will definitely not be willing to become like our Heavenly Devil cult and serve the ordinary people, helping them in their need. Imperial Preceptor had once said that he killed a batch of contrarians, but he still couldn't kill all of them. After killing one batch, there would be another batch. I had thought Imperial Preceptor was joking, but it seems like it's true. Qin Mu raised his head and looked at the dark cloud in the sky and said with a smile that wasn't really a smile, This snow and the dark cloud have created a disaster that can destroy the country, yet they are still thinking about what is devil-like and what is not. Not once did they think about helping the people. They're probably too used to being high at the top and think that helping the commoners is an insult to them, so it's the devil path. He shook his head. These kind of people aren't few in number, and there are probably extremists among them who would take this chance to rebel or even target our Heavenly Saint cult. You too must be careful. Cult Master, don't worry. Our cult does not have an undeserved reputation for standing tall until now, not crumbling under the so-called orthodox path. The two guardians bowed and left. Qin Mu composed himself and raised his head to look at that dark cloud above Eternal Peace Empire before shaking his head and returning back to Imperial College. Hu Linger, Dragon Qilin, and Dutian Devil King were already waiting on the ship. Qin Mu said, We should buy some New Year's goods on the way back to the village. I'm afraid there might no longer be anything in Border Dragon City. With Eternal Peace Empire in such a precarious situation, I reckon there will be much fewer merchants over there. Dutian Devil King raised his head and sized up the sky while chuckling. Your world is going to be in trouble. This heavy snow and dark cloud has shrouded the entire territory of your Eternal Peace Empire. Right? Qin Mu's heart moved slightly, and he asked politely, Lord Devil King, what wise opinion do you have? Kneel down and lick my toes. Then I will tell you, Dutian Devil King said, acting high and mighty. Qin Mu threw a glance at Hu Linger, and she opened the compartment in the chest area of the eight-armed god statue. She sat down inside and controlled Dutian Devil King to kneel down and stretch his tongue out to lick Qin Mu's shoes. Dutian Devil King immediately cried out, Devil can be killed but cannot be humiliated. Stop, stop. I'll say it, I'll say it. Qin Mu raised his hand. Hu Linger relaxed her control, and Dutian Devil King immediately jumped up. He spat twice and no longer dared to be impudent. These few days, Hu Linger had been oddly clever and messed with Dutian Devil King until he became submissive. He felt that a wise devil knew better than to fight when the odds were against him, so he could only cooperate with the demon fox. Dutian Devil King raised his hand to wipe his mouth and sneered, This is the method of a god, and not any normal god. If my true body descended, I could also execute this kind of action and use a meteorological phenomenon to attack, eliminating the entire human race. I could wipe out your race and turn this world into the new Dutian. However, the god that used this meteorological attack seems to be a little gentler, so they didn't land a ruthless blow. I reckon this snow and cloud are merely a gentle warning. Warning? Qin Mu was stunned. Just a gentle warning? This gentle warning would probably kill millions of commoners, since they wouldn't be able to make it through winter. He got lost in thought, and his mind ventured to Great Ruins. Because of the decree of a god and a devil, the people of Great Ruins were abandoned and gained the despise of everyone else. If the gods and devils don't die, there will be no end to trouble. Qin Mu said coldly, Wife, if the gods and devils don't die, there will be no end to trouble. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor stood on the clouds high up in the sky while looking at that incomparably vast cloud above Eternal Peace Empire and sighed ruefully. The woman beside him could only be said to be of average beauty. She wasn't incredibly pretty, but she was not ugly either. She had a pleasant look and was one of the palace maids rewarded to Imperial Preceptor. Among the many of them, she was the only one that became his wife. The thoughts of this woman were very incisive as she asked, Husband didn't go back this time. Is it because you feel that the Emperor can solve this natural disaster? Even if the Emperor can't solve it, there will be people who will solve it for him. There's no need for me to return. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor smiled. Let us go to the little jade capital in the sky.